First show is The Happy Gang, which was a Canadian Broadcasting Corporation radio lunchtime variety show that ran from 1937 to 1959. During the golden age of radio and well into the 1950s, it was one of Canada's most popular programs. In its heyday, it had about 2 million listeners a day. The show was known for its spontaneous humor, music, and corny jokes. The Happy Gang debuted on June 14, 1937 on station CRCT, a CBC affiliate in Toronto, later known as CBL. Originally intended as just a summer fill-in, it gained a following, and was moved to the CBC network 4 months later. The Happy Gang ran for 22 years, totaling nearly 4,900 broadcasts, until it was finally cancelled in late August 1959.
Who's there?
It's the Happy Gang.
Well, come on in.
Keep happy with the Happy Gang. Keep happy such a day with the bang. Happy Friday from Robin Hood, hello from Carnation. We'd like to send a smile or two across the whole nation. Keep happy in the Happy Gang way. Keep healthy, hope you're feeling okay. Cause if you're happy and healthy, the heck with being wealthy. So keep happy with the Happy Gang.
Yes, friends, it's the Happy Gang, brought to you today by Robin Hood Flour and Carnation Evaporated Milk. And this is Barry Wood reminding you that Robin Hood guarantees best results with one flour for all your baking. That's because it's the bake-tested flour. Bake-tested not just once, but twice, so you can be doubly sure. So ask for and insist on Robin Hood Guaranteed All-Purpose Flour, Canada's fastest-selling flour by far. Now here's the Happy Gang heading your way, so relax and listen, and you'll hear them say,
Keep happy and healthy, the heck with being wealthy. Here's Eddie Allen with the Happy Gang.
Thank you and hi, everybody, and a very happy hello to you from all the gang on this Friday, the 13th day of April. And if you're one of the superstitious clan who go into a shell on Friday the 13th, you just stick around your radio because we've got a few good luck charms to throw out your way. We're optimistic enough to hope that this may turn out to be a lucky day. Of course, it's doubtful whether our luck is holding out in the weather department. It's cooler today, so let's say we warm things up a little by introducing the guy who's always lucky enough to have 4 aces every time I have 4 kings. That's Bobby Jimmy, and here's Bob well and short against the likes of black cats or broken mirrors. He sings about his lucky charm.
I never knock wood. I step on black cats. I think that a bed instead of your head's the place to put hats. I walk under ladders. I never blink an eye. And Friday 13 is my day for being a slap happy guy. I always spill salt on tables and steak, and horseshoes I pitch right into the ditch, and mirrors I break. Don't wear any rabbit's foot, but I'm safe from harm. Baby, here's the reason, 'cause you're my lucky charm. Cigarettes with 3 on a match. Through clover I go and 4 leaves I throw right back in the patch. Now here's where it gets dramatic. I break every single rule, but I feel safe from harm. Baby, here's the reason, you're my lucky charm. Yes, across my fingers, 'cause you're my lucky charm.
Not sure, Bob, but I think Bert Niozzi had one lucky note left over there. Thanks, Bob. And friends, while we're on the subject of lucky days, may I remind you that if you haven't treated yourself to the exciting new Robin Hood orange cake mix, you haven't had a lucky day. We've tried it at our house, and it was our lucky day when we did. Barry, you tell the ladies all about it.
Yes, Robin Hood has made an orange cake mix that's aglow with real orange flavor. This exciting new Robin Hood orange cake mix gives you a cake unlike any other you've ever tasted. You've never made a cake like this before. Tangy, fresh orange flavor buds are the secret. And they're the wonderful difference in this entirely new Robin Hood cake mix. Now, hundreds of these buds are in each package, ready to blossom into full orange flavor the moment you pop the cake batter into the oven. You have no oranges to squeeze, no rind to grate, but you can actually see and taste tangy orange in every tempting bite of this home-style blended cake. It's orange cake that's moist and tender because you add your own fresh egg, just one, mind you. So you go ahead and try a new Robin Hood orange cake mix. Taste the wonderful difference. Only Robin Hood orange cake mix is made with tangy, fresh orange flavor buds. So get it today. Robin Hood orange cake mix.
Yes, friends, we have a birthday celebration coming up in the gang. Not till tomorrow, mind you, but we couldn't let the weekend go by without wishing Jimmy Namaro a happy birthday. How about it? Come on. Now, Jimmy, we don't want you to be shy, but we've prepared a salute for you, but we need your help. Now, we know that the one frustrating thing in your whole career has been the fact that so many of our listeners misinterpret or misspell your name. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone. Now, here's your cue sheet. We're going to all that's your cue sheet there. Now, if I can remember how to spell your name, we'll proceed. Kay, have you got a note? N is for the names we always call him.
Let me see. There's Tomatoes, Chiquita, Gray Doll, Piano Bill, Rosedale Rue. These are names.
What about Ronaldo, Jim? Oh, that's another Jimmy. I forgot. A is for the acting roles he plays.
A blinding torrent of rain and a brilliant burst of sun. By George.
M is for the money he is mad for.
Money, 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 money.
A is for his wife. Her name is Anne. Oh, thank you, Jim.
Crazy.
R is for his ragtime on piano. There we go. Jimmy, it's only a half-hour show. Jim, that's all. O is for the opera that he sings. That's all. Put them all together. They spell mother.
Mother?
I'm sorry.
Goodbye.
A happy birthday to you, Jim. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jimmy. Happy birthday to you. And a happy birthday to you,
Happy
Jim.
as if I was in my right mind.
Well, now we're going to ask you for a full-scale sample of that Namaro talent. You know, we always hate to think of being 1 year older, but each birthday does give us one more year of pleasant memories to look back on. You know, Jimmy's always been very keenly interested in all the successful acts in show business. Interested enough that he can give us a fair idea of what radio sounded like in the good old days. Here's Jim's conception of those were the good old days.
Now everybody's always talking about the good old days, the things that did occur and just how wonderful they were. So just to be in style, let's go back for a while and I'll try to recall for us all some things that made the good old days so good. I want to reminisce about the good old days when we stood around the piano to sing. I want to try to recall all those good old ways. If you owned a Model T, you were king. Now in those days of yore, when radio was new, in the evening you put on earphones and twisted a dial or two, and if you were lucky, you might get a squawk from Timbuktu. By George, those were the good old days. And when you turned on your radio, you heard something like this. Hi-ho, everybody. This is Rudy Valley broadcasting to you another stanza of your Hi-Ho Club. There's no love like our love, like no love at all. And I'm sure you'll recall Arthur Tracy, the street singer. Martha, rambling rose of the wild wood, Martha, with your fragrance divine. I want to reminisce about the good old days when barbershop harmony was quite the thing. I want to think all about those good old ways when a gate and a fence was all that could swing. Now, no one then had ever heard of a television set, so of course you never worried about the size of screen to get. But if you could Charleston or play a uke, well, you were popular, you can bet. For sure those were the good old days. Remember this?
Evening, folks. It's your old friend Singing Sam, and I want to tell you all about my little old gal friend, Miss Annabelle Lee. Who's wonderful, who's marvelous, Miss Annabelle Lee. Who's wonderful, who's marvelous, Miss Annabelle Lee.
And every evening around dinner time, through your loudspeaker came the poems of Tony Wands and the voice of Morton Down. When you're away at close of day, remember me. When shadows fall, my heart will call, remember me. I want to reminisce about the good old days when the game of mahjong was quite the fad. I want to think all about those good old ways when bell bottoms was the style for every lad. Well, whenever you were invited out, the Ouija board was the attraction. And the blaring of the gramophone nearly drove you to distraction. Ah, but dresses were so short, they couldn't be shorter, not even a fraction. Egad, those were the good old days. And even then, the last of the Red Hot Mamas was a big star, Sophie Tucker. Now listen, girls, a good man is hard to find, so take Sophie's advice. They say that opportunity knocks but once, and when that once is gone, sister, it's gone forever. So girls, if you want a man, there is just one but. Keep a smile on your face and keep your big mouth shut. Hey! And who can ever forget Ted Lewis, his battered silk hat and cane? And when my little baby smiles at me, you know, ladies and gentlemen, I go a-roaming, yes, sir, I go a-roaming to paradise. And you know, folks, I sigh and I cry, 'cause it's just a bit of heaven, yes, sir. When my little baby smiles at me, is everybody happy? Yes, sir. Yes, everyone was happy, or so it would seem. Everything was just dandy, peaches and cream. But honestly, folks, if you had to go back, I'm sure you'd rather dream all about the good old. How about those good old? You can have the good old days, yes, sir. That's all.
Well, one thing Jim didn't mention is that way back in those good old days, homemakers who used Robin Hood flour did their own bake testing, simply by using it constantly in all their baking. But nowadays, the makers of Robin Hood guaranteed all-purpose flour do that bake testing for you, right in their own modern mills. Experts in Robin Hood's test kitchens actually make bread, pies, rolls, and cakes each day to make sure Robin Hood flour is always the same constant top quality. And this careful bake testing is done not just once, it's done twice, so you can be doubly sure of better results. Yes, Robin Hood flour guarantees best results with one flour for all your baking. So this time, get Robin Hood Guaranteed All-Purpose Flour. It's Canada's fastest-selling flour by far.
That's a theme melody that we recognize from the good old days, too. It's the theme melody which identifies the sponsor of the second portion of our show, Carnation Evaporated Milk. And for Carnation, we present the musical combination of Kathleen Stokes and Blaine Matthey, the kind of music we've been lucky enough to be able to enjoy year after year. And here is their lucky chime for this Friday the 13th, I Was Lucky. Blaine and Kay? Very nice, Blaine and Kay. I was lucky. You know, speaking of lucky days, we still feel it was our lucky day when Les Foster joined us as a permanent member of our crew last September. Since then, we've enjoyed his accordion stylings of everything from marches to popular novelties of the day. It's very seldom you find two instrumental tunes at the top of the heap, but that's what's happening right now with the Poor People of Paris and Lisbon Antigua, which just goes to show you know how to pick your solos, Les. The Poor People of Paris, of course, won the toss earlier in the week, so Les, today we feel more than lucky if you'll play Lisbon Antigua.
You scored again, Les. You know, our good coffees come from far off Central and South America. But coffee's best companion is produced right here in Canada. It's Carnation evaporated milk. And Carnation gives coffee smooth, well-rounded, rich flavor. Millions of coffee lovers have discovered that. They prefer Carnation in coffee, prefer it to cream, prefer it to any other evaporated milk. Carnation creams a good cup of coffee to perfection. It makes the coffee appetizing in color, velvet smooth in consistency, rich and satisfying in flavor. Now, if you appreciate smooth, well-rounded, rich flavor in coffee, cream it with Carnation. Carnation has the consistency of heavy cream. It's heavy enough to whip, so naturally it does something special for coffee. And Carnation does something special for your pocketbook, too. Carnation costs only about half as much as light cream. Discover for yourself the fine things Carnation does for coffee, and enjoy Carnation for creaming fruit and cereals and desserts, too. When you shop, get a good supply of Carnation evaporated milk, packed in a special evaporated milk can.
Gee whiz, I sure hope the sun comes out today. You know, if it doesn't, we might be up to our knees in rain again this weekend. But then, I've been lucky in the rain. Maybe you will, too. I got lucky in the rain one day when I had nothing to do for an hour. I walked around in a shower. I had reason to complain. One moment I was sadly in need of a song. Next moment you came along. Then the heavens smiled at me. My heart said, how lucky can you be? Things like this you can't explain. I only know that I met the love of my life when I got lucky in the rain. The heavens smiled at me. My heart said, how lucky can you be? Things like this you can't explain. I only know that I met the love of my life when I got lucky in the rain. Thank you. Well, now let's hear again from the guy. Well, he seems to have the luck of the Irish. He's lucky in love. He has fisherman's luck. Not as lucky as he'd like to be with royalty checks, but he's still a lucky duck, and he knows it too, don't you, Bob?
I sure do, Ed. I'm walking on air, so happy I could fly. I haven't a care, I'm a lucky, lucky guy. Oh, lucky, lucky, lucky me. I'm a lucky son of a gun. I work 8 hours, I sleep 8 hours, that leaves 8 hours for fun. Lucky, lucky, lucky me. Even though I haven't a dime, I laugh and play in a carefree way, and I have a heck of a time. I smile at the sun, and when daylight is done, every evening is loaded with charms. I wish on the moon, and I whistle a tune, and I wink at the gal in my arms. Oh, lucky, lucky, lucky me. You can kiss your worries goodbye. Through life's just chuckle, and Lady Luck'll make you as lucky as I. La, 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 I smile at the sun, and when daylight is done, every evening is loaded with charms. I wish on the moon, and I whistle a tune, and I wink at the gal in my arms. Lucky, lucky, lucky me. You can kiss your worries goodbye. Through life's just chuckle, and Lady Luck'll make you as lucky as I.
Say, you all know that old saying about the way to a man's heart being through his stomach. And I know thousands of homemakers who'd say that the quickest way and the best way is the carnation milk way. They found that dishes made with carnation evaporated milk are big favorites with the man of the house, and the rest of the family, too. Carnation gives food an extra rich flavor, a smooth, creamy consistency that you just don't get any other way. Carnation has special blending qualities that you won't find in any other form of milk. So it blends more smoothly and evenly with other ingredients and recipes, giving unusually fine results. So try a carnation in your cooking and baking, and you'll get lucky, too.
Lucky, lucky, lucky me. I'm a lucky son of a gun. I work 8 hours, I sleep 8 hours, that leaves 8 hours for fun. Lucky, lucky, lucky me. Even though I haven't a dime, I laugh and play in a carefree way, and I have a heck of a time. I smile at the sun, and when daylight is done, every evening is loaded with charms. I wish on the moon, and I whistle a tune, and I wink at the gal in my arms. Lucky, lucky, lucky me. You can kiss your worries goodbye. Through life's just chuckle, and Lady Luck will make you as lucky as I.
And if that doesn't bring us luck, nothing will. And friends, it wouldn't matter how many lucky charms we had, we couldn't squeeze another minute out of that clock if we tried. If our luck holds out, we'll all be back again on Monday. And friends, now is the time to invest in better health. Our immediate concern should be a contribution to Canada's 1956 cancer campaign. Your help is vitally needed for research because research is the key to the defeat of this disease. Please send your contribution today to your local unit of the Canadian Cancer Society. Till Monday, this is Eddie Allen saying so long. Thanks for listening, and from the Carnation Company and all the gang, have a wonderful weekend and many happy returns of tomorrow, Jim. Hope you have a nice birthday. May your Friday be a happy day and a healthy day.
The Gang was brought to you today by Carnation Evaporated Milk and Robin Hood Flour. Larry Wood speaking. This is the Trans-Canada Network of the CBC.
The hero of Becker, House Detective, another CBC radio series. Becker clues us in on his lot in life, the Queen of the Rockies. A Grand Hotel. About the last thing you'd expect to find in the Rockies in 1923. But then I may be the last thing you'd expect to find in a grand hotel. I'm the house detective. Becker's the name. Just Becker, so he's a 1920s house dick who, like the hotel, is a little out of place. It seems Becker has a few surprises in his past, a fancy-pants Eastern education which, even then, must have gone over real well in Alberta, a stint as a mountain guide, of all things, and a tragedy that haunts him. And so he throws himself into his work, trying to protect the hotel and its guests from all sorts of trouble. And oh, what guests! Film stars, American senators, European explorers, con men, flappers, and maybe, just maybe, a gangster or two. Through it all, Becker tries to keep a cool head.
A view of Mount Von Relling.
The Queen of the Rockies, a grand hotel. One of the jewels strung out across the rails from Halifax to Vancouver. She's an ancient Scottish castle, though she's less than a half-century old, and all the plumbing's indoors. About the last thing you'd expect to find in the Rockies in 1923. But then I may be the last thing you'd expect to find in a grand hotel. I suppose we're a marriage of opposites. And like any good marriage, we both have our roles to play. She attracts the tourists. I guard her from their attentions. Truth is, I spend most of my time guarding the tourists from each other. I'm the house detective. Becker's the name. Just Becker. I'm a pretty down-to-earth kind of man. Though, thanks to a fancy Eastern education, I can look presentable if necessary. I suppose that's the main reason they hired me. I don't stand out in the Princess of Wales dining room. And that suits me just fine.
So, I have fought my way through the storm, my friend. And such a storm would have killed a normal man. I have reached the summit, but the final act is still to come. And so, this is the truth. Do not doubt me, Kruger.
Niemals.
Never doubt the word of Von Relling. I raised my arm to heaven, and I drove my axe into the mountain. I sank to my knees, and thank God, I have been the first to conquer that peak.
And you, Countess? Do you fit into this scene?
Also on my knees, Herr Kruger.
Count Von Relling.
Ah, Captain West, we have not seen you so much this summer.
Save the chit-chat, Von Relling. You and I have business to attend to.
We do?
A matter of a mountain?
Ah, I see. Well, I take a cognac in the library before bed, Captain, if you would like to join me.
And me.
The mountains are not for women,
I
madam.
beg your pardon, Captain. You are drunk.
No, my friend. The captain is obviously unwell, so I will be there.
And I will be waiting.
Help! Help! Gott sei Dank. Du bist endlich da.
Hold it. Hold it. In English, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There has been a shot.
Where?
Here, in the library. I'm afraid we may already be too late.
Stand back.
Oh, no.
You recognize him?
Yeah, it is a count. What is that noise?
Only the curtains. The window's open.
Then I will close it.
What? Are you all right?
It is so far to the ground. I do not like heights. The count loves fresh air. He throws open the windows wherever he is.
Was.
He is dead then.
Nobody's gonna last long with a hole like that in his chest. You ever seen one of these before?
No, I am not a soldier.
Webley 455, revolver, British Army.
Becker! Becker!
Someone is...
Mr. Hickey, the manager. In here.
What is going on, Becker? Oh, is he?
Yep. Shot himself by the look of it.
Don't play Detective Becker.
The door was locked from the inside. The key's over there on the desk. Window was open.
Yeah, but you'd have to be a bird to fly out that window. It's at least 50 feet straight down.
Yeah.
I think now I must go to the Countess. If you'll excuse me, gentlemen.
Yes, of course.
Just a second, sir. Would you mind telling me why you were wandering around?
Becker?
No, it is appropriate. I was wandering around because I cannot sleep. Now, if you will excuse me.
Of course. I'm terribly sorry you had to be involved in this here, Kruger.
Yeah, it is tragic. Good night.
You're not hired to grill the guests, Becker. You were hired to protect, not detect.
There's something missing.
But leave it to the police. Right now you have other responsibilities.
Like?
Well, you're about to discover one of the more unpleasant aspects of hotel life.
Becker, ma'am.
Becker?
The hotel detective.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Becker. I have been waiting.
The Count died earlier this evening.
Oh, no. I must go to him.
Perhaps I should call the housekeeper.
No. I must go now.
Perhaps a doctor?
I do not need a doctor.
Sit down, Mathilde.
No. I was raised in discipline. Now I must that discipline learn again. You can tell me what happened, Mr. Becker.
He was shot through the chest. It looks like your husband killed himself.
I hear in your voice you do not believe this.
It's not my decision to make.
Do you know the Count was to meet Captain West in the library tonight, Mr. Becker?
You think the captain...
The Count was a great man, Mr. Becker. The world is full of small men who would tear a great man down.
Well, sir, it doesn't seem likely to me that a man, whatever his size, would call out his enemy in front of a dining room full of people.
This amuses you?
No, ma'am, I just...
My husband was a hero, Mr. Becker.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I am sorry, too. Now, if you will excuse me, I must go to him.
I'll wait.
No, thank you, Mr. Becker. Mr. Kruger will bring me. One should not spend one's last moments together mid strangers.
Good night, Mr. Becker.
Yes. Good night, ma'am.
Becker!
Finally made it, did you, Sergeant?
So, where's this body, then?
In the library.
Let's go. Did you notice anything suspicious?
You look for yourself, Neil. There's something I have to do.
Are you going independent on me, Becker?
I'll catch up with you later.
Nothing you'd like to say to me first?
Yeah. Try to figure out what's not there.
Thanks. Oh, damn. Where's the library?
Yes? Becker, what are you doing here?
I'm the house detective now.
Oh, is it the noise? We've got to get some use out of this old axe. It's colder than an icebox in here.
That's not how it's done.
Nonsense. You bang the pipes and the stokers stoke. At least that's how things used to be.
Things change.
They do indeed. Well, sit down. I'll consider myself well and truly warned. Out of whiskey, I'm afraid. You don't drink, do you, Becker?
No.
How long's it been, then?
Almost 3 years.
Good boy. I'm proud of you.
I didn't come about the noise, Captain.
Oh, you didn't? To what do I owe the pleasure, then, Becker?
Von Relling's dead.
Right. I suppose it wasn't an accident?
It looks like he killed himself.
Did he leave a note?
We found him in the library.
Library? You're fishing, aren't you, Becker?
Would you mind telling me what you talked about?
Yes, I'd mind very much. Matter of honor, you see.
It isn't that simple, Captain. Count von Relling's dead. You may have to justify your actions.
Justify my actions? Listen, Jimmy, what lay between von Relling and me is confidential. The Count respected that, and so do I.
I don't see as how the Count's had a whole lot of choice in the matter. He was shot through the chest with a Webley .455, Army issue.
And you think I killed him?
I'm asking you.
By God, you're a grateful little swine, Jimmy. I pulled you out of your own vomit, and you accuse me.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I want to help you. There's no one I want to help more, but damn it, von Relling's dead, and I know, don't ask me how I know, but I know it wasn't suicide. Something doesn't add up.
That's your problem, Jimmy.
The gun's your problem. Damn it, Captain, I don't believe you killed von Relling. Help me find out who did.
The man's dead, Jimmy. Go to bed, let a poor man rest. It's been a long day.
Look, I want to help you.
Then you'll have to figure it out for yourself, Becker. Because I can't help you.
Careful! The souffle, she is vulnerable.
Yes, sir.
Careful! Your breakfast is growing cold, my friend.
I'd like to shake the story out of him.
And who do you wish to shake?
West, the mystery man. What's he hiding? What does he owe to von Relling?
Perhaps the Countess?
Well, if she knows anything, she's not talking either.
She has a guest for breakfast. Perhaps she is talking to him?
Who?
That I do not know. But if you threaten me with shaking, I would say it was Herr Kruger.
Well, how would you know
Herr
that...
Kruger is the only guest who takes bitters with his orange juice.
If that's Hickey, I'm gone.
Ici Martel. Bonjour, Monsieur Hickey. No, he is just gone. A sneak thief? Oui, monsieur. Oui, monsieur, I will tell him when I see him.
She's a beauty, Whiskey Dan.
Ah, Becker. And how's it suiting you? The life of a dandy.
It has its moments. I hear you've been guiding Captain West.
You wouldn't be playing detective with me, would you, lad?
You're a suspicious man, Dan.
I heard Von Rillen was done last night.
You think West might have been involved in that?
I think I liked you more when you was a guide.
Yeah, I might agree with you about that. You think he was?
No, I don't think he was. And if he was, good for him, I'd say. He was a terrible man, Von Relling. Him with his axe, leaving it for the world to see, stuck into the top of them mountains he climbed.
What about the Countess?
Just as high and bloody mighty. She was tough, though. I'll give her that.
So what was it between West and Von Relling?
Look, Becker, I don't know what you're looking for, but I'm taking it on faith you're trying to help the captain.
I owe him a lot, Dan.
And don't you forget it, boy. Last summer... You sure you don't know about this?
I wasn't paying too much attention to anything last summer.
Right. You weren't, were you? Well, last summer, the captain led a party up the west face of Old Needle Point.
Mount Von Relling.
There's some call it that. Von Relling led another. A storm came up, bloody unexpected. A real blinder. The captain and his companions were pinned down on a ledge. Somehow, Von Relling got through and beat him to the top.
That's a hard loss, but I don't see...
They died, Becker. The captain's friends. We've spent the last 2 months looking for their remains.
You find anything?
No. Nothing we was looking for anyways. Now, some of us have work to do, Becker. Sorry if I stepped on your corns.
Did you ever see the Count without his axe?
Not for a moment. We figured they slept with it between them.
Becker!
Mr. Hickey, sir. Right, the sneak thief. Give me a few minutes and I'll be on to him like salt on a bird's tail.
Mr. Becker.
I assure you, sir.
I thought you might like to know that Sergeant Drake is at this very moment attending your piratical friend, Captain...
West? Where?
His room, I would imagine. 729.
Oh, why didn't you tell me?
Now, Captain West, can you identify...
What's going on?
Don't interfere, Becker.
That is my revolver.
And this revolver was used to shoot and kill Count von Relling. Can you explain that?
You don't have to tell him a thing, Captain.
Oh, don't be so damn jealous, Jimmy. I'm not going to tell them anything I wouldn't tell you.
I'm afraid I have to ask you to accompany...
Am I under arrest?
Not yet.
Pack up my room, will you, Jimmy? I wouldn't want my equipment to go missing. You know what I mean.
You're not making it very easy, Captain.
Neither did you, Jimmy. Neither did you.
It's a beautiful view.
Yeah. You can just make out the peak of Mount Von Relling. It is hard not to cry. We will bury the Count beneath it. Ah, such a fine music. I understand your friend Captain West has been arrested.
He's helping the police with their investigations.
Which means?
Which means Sergeant Drake thinks the captain knows more than he's saying.
And you, Mr. Becker.
I wonder if he's the only one with a secret.
Meaning?
Have you noticed your husband's axe is missing?
You have found it?
Not yet.
Oh, that is a pity. I told Sergeant Drake it was missing.
You reported it?
Yeah. I was hoping to bury him with it.
The Count was very
attached
attached
to... It never left his hand.
Can you describe it?
It was an axe like any other. Except that the handle was decorated with little silver triangles. 7 little silver triangles. Each one of them representing a mountain we conquered.
We, Countess?
I was always at my husband's side.
Impressive.
Are you condescending to me, Mr. Becker? Or Or do you believe, as your friend West, that the mountains are no place for women?
I have no beliefs about mountaineering, ma'am. Let's return to the axe for a moment. As I understand it, the Count left an axe stuck into the peak of every mountain you climbed.
Yeah, it was his ritual.
Each succeeding peak, a new axe with one more silver triangle?
That is correct.
So now there are 7 of your husband's axes littering the mountains.
If that is the way you wish to see it. I think now I must return to the arrangements.
Of course. Oh, just one more question. Can you think of any reason your husband might have feared Captain West?
No. He thought West was annoying, but...
So West wouldn't have anything on the Count?
On the Count?
Something that might bring him down. Evidence.
Of what?
Well, that seems to be the problem. I promised to pack up the captain's room. I suppose I was wondering what to look for.
Are you asking me to accompany you?
I guess that's asking a bit much.
Let me give you some advice, Mr. Becker. My husband was a great man. Do not join the ranks of dwarfs who would attempt to tear him down.
What am I missing, Francois?
Relax, my friend. Have a brandy.
Tea.
I will boil the kettle.
Let's go through it once more. According to Kruger, the Count liked fresh air.
I think he had some trouble with his breathing.
How do you figure that?
He had the bowls of balsam and boiling water brought to his room.
So, Kruger told the truth. Oh, which leaves us with the axe.
The axe?
Von Relling's axe.
Was there?
Was not there, but it should have been there. A good climber could have taken the axe and disappeared up the wall.
West?
Kruger, he's afraid of heights. He made a real point of telling me that. And then there's the Countess.
Oh, you do not think a woman...
No, this woman might. But West is still the most likely. But there's something else, something he won't talk about. If he tell me what it is, I might be able to protect him.
And you feel you must protect him?
He protected me once, Francois, with a lot less reason, believe me.
What if you discover that he is guilty?
I just don't believe that he is. Nobody calls out his rival in front of a dining room full of witnesses. No, it's the axe, Francois. Find the axe, and you find the killer.
Have you checked the captain's room?
No, but I was in his room right after... Oh, my God. The radiator. He was banging on the radiator.
You have remembered something.
Yeah, something I wish I hadn't.
I don't like this, Becker.
If you see someone coming, knock on the door. Quietly.
If I see someone, they are going to see me.
Let's get a little light on the subject. That's better. Francois?
Don't turn around.
Becker, are you all right?
You know, I'd almost written you off, Kruger.
I said don't move.
Becker!
Give me the axe, Kruger.
Stay away from me.
Give me the axe.
You just had to be curious, didn't you, Mr. Becker?
Oh, mon Dieu!
Vocês! Oh!
What kept you so long?
Beg your pardon?
Oh, thanks, Francois.
He's out like a match. That is what you are looking for?
That's it. You can tell by the triangles.
You think he was planning to plant this on Captain West?
Maybe he was, maybe he... Not this one he wasn't.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
6 triangles, Francois.
What?
6 lovely little triangles. We better call Drake.
Isn't it a little late for more questions, Mr. Becker?
I'm afraid I've come with more news.
Bad news?
For some. Mr. Kruger has confessed to the murder of your husband.
Franz, that's impossible.
I'm afraid he's confessed.
But why?
It seems he did it for you.
For me?
I don't quite know how to put this delicately. Was your husband aware of your relationship with Mr. Kruger?
Herr Kruger and I have a friendship, Mr. Becker. That is all.
Perhaps he hoped for more.
Poor Franz. Do you think it is my fault, Becker? I certainly didn't realize... Excuse me. It is hard to lose 2 men in so short a time.
I'll bet. Sergeant Drake will be around early tomorrow to take your deposition.
I am suspected?
I'm sure you'll be able to convince him that Kruger acted alone. Good night, Countess.
Good night, Mr. Becker. I'm not sure if I should thank...
Oh, I forgot. I left something out here. The sergeant wanted to ask you to identify this.
You got this from Herr Kruger?
He attacked me with it. Is it...
Yeah, it is Otto's.
You're positive? You have to be absolutely sure.
Yeah, the little silver triangles. It is Otto's axe, for sure.
Kruger must have gone out the window, scaled the wall to another window, climbed in, and doubled back to discover the body.
Perhaps it is time to put your cards on the table, Mr. Becker. Let us see what you have.
6 triangles, Countess. 6 lovely silver triangles. Can you beat that?
I don't understand.
This axe, the one you just identified, has 6 silver triangles. Not 7. 6. You know what that means?
I don't know.
If I remember the ritual properly, Countess, this axe should be driven into the granite atop Mount Von Relling. It's my guess that Captain West found it hidden a good deal lower.
Your guess, Mr. Becker.
That axe never made it to the top, Countess, and your husband didn't either.
And what does that prove? Herr Kruger has already confessed.
Well, I ask myself, why would you identify that axe as the axe your husband took to the library? You knew that axe had one more triangle than the one you're holding. The triangle from Mount Von Relling. Why?
It's late. I'm tired. I may have...
Because you'd prefer to send Kruger to the gallows than allow a stain on your husband's reputation. Because it's my guess that if Sergeant Drake searches this suite, which he will, Countess, we'll find the second axe. The one you used to climb out the window of the library.
You believe you have all the answers, don't you?
Pretty well. But I'm still curious about one thing. Why would a great mountaineer like your husband...
A great mountaineer. How you men assume the best of each other. Von Relling didn't deserve a single one of his little silver trophies, Mr. Becker. I planted those axes. Von Relling told the stories. When the snow drove me back from the peak, it didn't matter to him. His myth demanded a victory, and he claimed it.
But you cooperated.
The Von Rellings are very conventional, Becker. I had to hide behind the Count's skirts if I wanted to climb.
And yet you killed him.
I arrived at the library at 11. Captain West had just left. Apparently he believed that Otto might prefer suicide to being unmasked as a cheat. He'd agreed to remain silent, and, like a gentleman, he'd left Otto with the means to accomplish the task.
A Webley 455.
Exactly. But like everybody else, he overestimated Otto. Otto didn't want to die. He'd prefer to confess, to dishonor both of us. Could I climb after that, Becker? He was taking the mountains away from me. So I shot him. Sometime later, there was a knocking on the door. Someone had heard the shot. I suppose I panicked. I grabbed the axe and let myself out the window.
And Kruger?
Kruger had nothing to do with it, until he looked out the window to find me hanging on the wall. You never believe how cold it was waiting for him to get away from you, Becker. He opened a window and pulled me in.
And what was he doing in West's room?
You did invite me to look for the evidence, Becker. I thought you might find something, so I sent an emissary. Ah, such a foolish man. Excuse me. I need another handkerchief. I suppose he loved me.
He did indeed.
A fantasy. He loved a woman he couldn't have. Von Relling loved a mountain he didn't climb. All fantasy. Men are all fantasy. I, however, am not a fantasy, Mr. Becker. I am not sentimental, and I will happily shoot you.
You won't escape.
As you've already discovered, Becker, there is a way. And as you've returned the axe...
And you'll run into Sergeant Drake and his forces.
What prevents me from shooting you? Or taking you hostage?
Your intelligence, I suspect. They rarely hang women in Canada. You may have a few chances to escape before you find out. This isn't one of them.
Then, for the moment, I must surrender. You may take the gun. Can you see the moon, Becker? Just there, almost lost behind the peak. If I do escape, Becker, they're going to call that mountain Mount Mathilde. I'm trusting you, not to let anyone in on my plans. As a gentleman.
My lips are sealed.
Sergeant Drake?
And that was that. In the morning, there was a whole new crop of guests, a whole new set of problems. The Countess was arrested, and the next day Drake found the final axe, with 7 silver triangles set into its shaft. It was stuck in the hall stand behind a couple of canes and an umbrella. I walked past that stand at least 6 times in 24 hours. The following summer, West reached the peak of Mount Von Relling, but they refused to change the name. The tourists loved the story too much. West retired back to England in disgust. I don't know if the Countess ever escaped, but some nights when the air is clear and the moon tips the peak of her mountain, I truly hope she did.
You just heard A View of Mount Von Relling, Episode 1 of Becker, written by Martin Kinch. Featured in the cast were Andy Mayton as Becker, Stephen Hare as Hickey, and David Lorraine as Francois. You heard Louis Negan as Von Relling, with David Everhart as Kruger and Pamela Brooke as the Countess. Brian Gromoff played West, while Daryl Shuttleworth was Drake, and Jack Aykroyd was Whiskey Dan. Period music for Becker is arranged by Miles Jackson, while the recording engineer is Bob Doble, with sound effects by Uta Schafland. The production assistant, Christine Story. Becker is produced and directed in Calgary by Martin Fishman. The series script consultant is James W. Nichol, and the executive producer in Toronto is Bill Howell. For the Mystery Project, I'm Bob Boving. See you next week.
Famous Canadian Trials, the trial of Dr. William H. King. We have no information on this show.
The Trial of Dr. William H. King. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation presents a play by Alan King based on the trial of an Ontario physician who, in the middle of the last century, was charged with the murder by poisoning of his young wife. The play is part of the series Famous Canadian Trials, produced in the Montreal studios of the CBC. The Trial of Dr. William H. King.
People noticed that I was not at my daughter's funeral. Perhaps they thought I was too ill to go. But I knew her husband would be there weeping over the grave, so it was safe to search their house. What I found there should help to hang that man.
That man was Dr. William Henry King, and his wife's funeral was held on November the 6th, 1858, in Brighton, Ontario. And while he was indeed weeping over the grave, his mother-in-law, Elizabeth Lawson, was searching his house. To good effect.
A picture of that girl, that's what I found. And love letters from her. Melinda Vandervoort, as flighty as her name. And to think my daughter was fool enough to introduce her husband to this hussy. Oh, I suppose I shouldn't speak like that about Annie, now that she's dead. But she told me herself what happened. Less than 2 hours after she introduced him, she said this Melinda hussy was telling Annie how she felt about William.
He is my dream man, Mrs. King. I knew it the moment I saw his picture at your parents' house. Oh, I fell in love with him at once. Do you think, dear Mrs. King, that I might have a portrait of him?
I would have put her out of the house, but Annie gave her the likeness. And then she sent him hers.
The most precious thing, except the original, on earth.
And he only married to my daughter for 4 years. I told my husband it was his duty to speak to Simon Davidson, the coroner.
Only an inquest, Simon, can clear up the suspicions we have about our son-in-law. Now think of this. He meets this 20-year-old girl, Melinda. She says she's in love with him. They exchange portraits. And in 2 weeks, our daughter Annie has fallen ill. William treats her, says she has some disease of the womb. Later calls it cholera morbus and treats her for it. There's no improvement. So I insist that Dr. Fife be called in. Then she begins to get better. But at the beginning of November, she has violent pains again, and on November the 4th, she is dead. Don't you agree with me that West can discover the truth?
The coroner agreed and set the wheels in motion, and those wheels set Dr. King in motion.
To Cape Vincent in New York State. You can stay with my aunt there, Melinda, while I put an end to all this nonsense and the gossip connecting my good name with the death of my wife.
We, the coroner's jury, find the deceased, Sarah Ann King, came to her death by poisoning as the result of arsenic administered to her by her husband, William Henry King.
Sheriff, issue a warrant for King's arrest. If you can't lay your hands on him, I'll get him. He murdered my sister. And if you'll swear me in as a special constable, I'll get him for you.
And he did. Clinton Lawson, Annie King's brother, with a fine disregard for the niceties of international law, went down into New York State and brought back his brother-in-law at gunpoint. How he did it, he will describe at the trial held at Coburg, Ontario on April the 4th and 5th, 1859, before the Honorable Mr. Justice Burns, with Thomas Galt for the Crown and John Hilliard Cameron for the defense.
Mr. Galt. May it please your lordship, gentlemen of the jury. In order to see the case I am about to present to you in its proper perspective, it will be necessary for me to describe to you from the beginning this marriage which has ended so terribly. This marriage between the man who stands accused before you, Dr. William Henry King, and Sarah Ann Lawson, who only a scant 4 years after that apparently happy event lay in her grave, the victim of a mysterious illness which up to this day has not been fully explained. The course of the marriage was from the start stormy. Within a year, the child had been born to this young man and his wife, and the wife had returned to the home of her parents, alleging that she had suffered maltreatment at his hands. But after some study of medicine in the United States, he returned to Ontario and settled down to practice medicine in the town of Brighton. Well, he was successful, not only in his practice, but in a reconciliation with his wife, who rejoined him. He built up a good reputation in his personal habits, and his practice throve. He was young, he was handsome, attractive to women, an attraction which he reciprocated. Gentlemen, it may have been a fatal attraction, for on September 21st of last year, he met a 20-year-old woman named Melinda Vandervoort, and from then on, a series of events took place which, in the contention of the Crown, culminated in the death by poison of Sarah Ann King.
Melinda Vandervoort appears in no way disturbed by Mr. Galt's involving her in the fatal sequence of events. She appears gay and pretty, and the onlookers can well understand her reputation as a flirt. Mr. Galt covers more history and then sets out the main points of the Crown's case.
I will prove, gentlemen of the jury, that Mrs. King was in good health up to October 4th of last year. But I will prove also that from that date until her death on November 3rd, she suffered violent pains and retching. I will prove that only poison can have caused her death, and I will adduce expert evidence as to the finding of 11 grains of arsenic in her stomach. I will suggest to you that the accused had a strong motive to murder his wife, a motive as old as the record of human history, an illicit attachment to another woman. I will present evidence that even before the coroner had concluded his inquest, the accused told his father-in-law that he expected to be apprehended on a charge of murder. You will hear that the accused had more than once prophesied his wife's death. Yet experts will swear to you that there was no trace of disease in her body. I will ask you to give particular attention to the fact that Dr. King administered all his wife's medicines. I will ask you also to consider that in connection with expert testimony, the symptoms of her illness were those of arsenical poisoning. And I will ask you to bear in mind that if the accused should claim that he administered arsenic by mistake, then the case before you will become narrowed down to one of intent. And it will then be your duty to weigh the evidence with meticulous care. Now, gentlemen of the jury, I will not take up any more of your time, but will proceed to call my first witness.
Simon Davidson, the coroner, and one of his jurors, followed by a conductor on the Grand Trunk Railway, assured the court that every precaution was taken in conveying the dead woman's stomach to Toronto for analysis. The analyst was Professor Henry Croft of the University of Toronto.
Upon examination, I found 11 grains of arsenic in the stomach.
Now, Professor Croft, could that arsenic have been put into the stomach after death?
It's a far-fetched suggestion, Mr. Cameron.
Far-fetched or not, could it have been possible?
There has already been evidence given as to the precautions taken in conveying the organs to me.
Professor, I'm simply asking you to say, without comment, whether or not those 11 grains of arsenic could have been put into the stomach after death.
Yes, they could.
Thank you, Professor Croft. Now, would you repeat, for the benefit of his lordship and the jury, what you told my learned friend about the condition of the stomach itself?
Well, I said...
I mean, was it inflamed?
Not seriously.
Very little, in fact?
Very little, yes.
Well, is that a condition that you would expect in the stomach of a person who had taken 11 grains of arsenic?
Well...
Would you not expect considerable inflammation?
Yes.
A very great deal more than you found?
Yes.
So much more, in fact, that the little you did find is negligible?
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Croft.
Have you any re-examination, Mr. Galt? If it please your lordship, just one question. Professor Croft, on this matter of the introduction of arsenic after death, in your examination you stated that you found traces of arsenic in the liver.
That is correct.
Could that have been introduced after death?
To the liver? No. That would be quite impossible.
Thank you, Professor. That will be all.
But inflammation seems to be a matter of degree. Or is it time? The next three witnesses, all doctors, say that when they conducted the post-mortem, the lining of the stomach was inflamed. But they do not say greatly. And could the inflammation have subsided by the time the stomach reached the laboratory of the previous witness in Toronto? The doctors are the last of the Crown's expert witnesses and are followed by Mrs. Lawson, who goes over the history of the marriage and relates how her suspicions led her to demand an inquest and touches on some more pertinent details.
He always mixed his own medicines.
Do you mean for all his patients, Mrs. Lawson?
Oh, I couldn't swear to that. But I do know that the medicines he gave to my daughter, he mixed those right in his office.
Did you at any time discuss with the accused the effects of these medicines on your daughter?
Yes. I said they don't seem to be doing her any good. And he said it only seemed that way. He was a homeopathic doctor, you know. And he said he had to give her the medicine that would produce the same symptoms in a healthy body. I didn't quite understand the treatment, but he was so successful with his other patients that I supposed he knew what he was doing.
Mrs. Lawson, will you tell us what happened on November 3rd? That is the day before Mrs. King died.
Well, Annie went to sleep early. I was over at her house, and he said she'd gone to sleep, that she had never slept better. Of course, I was glad to hear that, because sometimes the pains have been terrible, and she'd spent some nights in agony instead of sleeping.
You did not actually see your daughter on the night of November 3rd?
Not after he told me she was asleep, no.
Did you see her the next morning, the morning of the day she died?
Yes. I went in with him to her bedroom. I thought she would be awake and perhaps feeling better after her long sleep. But she seemed to be still asleep. I was afraid. It seemed such a heavy sleep, like the sleep of death. I spoke to her. I tried to wake her and call her by name. She tried to open her dear eyes, but could not.
And shortly after that, your daughter died?
Yes. Yes, she was dead.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Lawson. That will be all I have to ask you.
And now to the witness stand comes the man without whom Dr. King might never have been available for trial. The brother of the dead woman, Clinton Lawson, who took the law into his own hands.
Oh, everything was quite legal, Mr. Galt. I was sworn in as a special constable, and I had a warrant for King's arrest. And being in the United States, of course, I took a U.S. Marshal with me when I went after him.
Did you know where King was?
Oh, yes, sir. I inquired at the local post office at Cape Vincent. And they told
I
me
object, my lord. What somebody told this witness is not evidence.
Objection sustained. You must not tell us what anybody said, Mr. Lawson. As a result of inquiries that you made at the local post office, what did you do?
Well, I went, 6 or 8 miles into the country to the house of a Mr. Bate. Now, Mr. Gordon, the U.S. Marshal, was with me.
Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
Well, I hid so King wouldn't see me. And Mr. Gordon went to the door to ask for him. He, Gordon that is, had not been in the house for 3 minutes when Dr. King jumped out of the window. Well, I ran after him, and he ran towards the woods. But as I was after him, quick, he turned and ran into a barn. Well, we went in and found him under the straw in a hog's nest.
And then what did you do?
Well, I told him he was under arrest and he'd better come home.
He accepted your authority and came?
Yes, sir.
Cross-examination, Mr. Cameron?
Yes, my lord. Now, Mr. Lawson, you agreed with my learned friend that Dr. King accepted your authority and came. What? Did you just stand there and say to him, I am a special constable, come with me, and he came?
Well, not exactly.
Well, you showed him your authority as a special constable.
Oh, yes, yes.
Did you use any other persuasion?
I don't understand.
Did you use anything but your badge and your warrant to persuade him to come with you? Did you, Mr. Lawson?
I had a revolver.
And did you threaten him with it?
I said he'd be shot if he ran. A lawyer told me that I had no right to
And
take...
so he came?
Well, I guess he did.
Willingly?
Oh, no, sir. No, sirree.
That'll be all, Mr. Lawson.
Now the Crown introduces evidence to show motive. And very pretty, lively motive it is, too, in the person of Melinda Vandervoort.
Did you or did you not send to Dr. King this picture that I now show you, this likeness of yourself?
Yes, I sent it.
And did you or did you not send this letter to the prisoner?
Yes, I did.
One moment, please. My lord, I will request that this witness now be asked to step down. I must read this letter and one in reply, but I do not wish to do so while she's in the witness box. Very well. You will step down, witness. Thank you, my lord. Now, my lord, and gentlemen of the jury, the first letter is one from the prisoner to Miss Vandervoort, and it reads as follows. Sweet little lump of good nature, I long looked with prudent anxiety for the arrival of the object of my thoughts, but began to despair. Still, I had too much perseverance to give up. I walked to the post office this morning and found the most precious thing except the original on earth. Better to me
And so
than all
on,
California.
in the same vein. With one paragraph, however, which must surely have caught the attention of the
It's
jury.
a perfect infatuation for me. Can you keep from sacrificing yourself upon the hymeneal altar for the next year? I wish so.
The letter is unsigned, but there is no doubt about its authorship, and the reply to it is acknowledged by the present witness.
One smile only from your countenance can inspire a depth of veneration in my bosom never felt by me for any other individual. Well, now, Doctor, don't you consider it very wrong for me to correspond with you? I'm afraid, if known, it would destroy Annie's happiness. And, for instance, if I was in her position, I would much rather be in my grave than suffer the idea of your intimacy with another. Though perhaps you express some of your ideas to me for pastime. If so, I hope you'll not continue them, for I am easily flattered and it may prove to me something very serious. I'm very lonely. My sister has not returned yet. I am pretty well and hope you enjoy the same blessing. Please answer if you deem me worthy. I hope you will not criticize your wavering. Then there's the letter L, followed by a dash, and the letter is signed Van.
And the witness returns to the box for cross-examination.
Now, Miss Vandervoort, you say you did send your picture to Dr. King?
Oh, yes, sir, I did. Mrs. King asked me to.
His wife asked you to send it?
To her, directed to him.
You mean that Mrs. King asked you to send your picture to her so that she could give it to her husband? And did she also ask you to write to him?
Well, no, but when I got the letter from him, I thought it was written for amusement.
What?
And I sent him the letter in answer. For amusement.
Oh, for amusement.
She must have conveyed her amusement to the prisoner, judging by the observation of the reporter for the Toronto Globe.
While the letters were being read, the prisoner showed no sensibility, but rather seemed to share in the amusement which could not be repressed.
Indeed, according to Melinda, there was nothing serious between her and Dr. King.
I never had any improper intercourse with Dr. King.
But with the opening of the defense, frivolity was abandoned.
You are Dr. Charles J. Hempel of Philadelphia.
Yes, sir.
Would you tell his lordship, Doctor, would you tell his lordship and the jury something of your occupation and qualifications?
I am a professor of materia medica at the Homeopathic College in Philadelphia.
That's the college at which Dr. King studied?
That's right, sir.
Now, Doctor, you've heard it given in evidence here that 11 grains of arsenic were found in the stomach of the deceased.
That's right, sir.
And that the stomach showed signs of only slight inflammation.
Yes.
Would you care to comment on that, Doctor?
In my opinion, sir, those two facts are not consistent. The presence of 11 grains of arsenic should have produced far greater signs of inflammation.
Now, turning to the administration of arsenic, Doctor, can you tell us whether or not it is ever prescribed for the treatment of disease?
Oh, for several diseases, yes. In small quantities.
I see. Is cholera morbus included among those diseases, Doctor?
Yes, arsenic's often used for the treatment of that disease.
Now, what are the dangers in taking arsenic?
Well, there's no danger from taking small doses. Arsenic, you see, is not a cumulative poison. Now, by that I mean small doses do not accumulate into a large quantity and cause fatal results. To cause death, arsenic must be introduced in a large dose.
Would you care to express an opinion, Dr. Hempel, as to the possible cause of death in the case of Mrs. King?
Well, it's difficult to say at this stage. But from what I've heard here in court and from what I've read in the medical reports, it seems to me that the post-mortem examination was not sufficiently thorough to enable anyone to make an exact diagnosis. Mrs. King may, perhaps, have died of nervous exhaustion.
You consider that a possibility?
It is a possibility, yes. And then I have heard it given in evidence that she fell from a buggy. Now, such a fall would be likely to aggravate any malady which she had at the time.
But there is nothing really conclusive about Dr. Hempel's evidence. A professor of chemistry and toxicology from the same college, Dr. Flanders, proves to be unpopular with the spectators.
To my mind, the cause of Mrs. King's death is very obscure. The most satisfactory reason for it that I can think of is the fall from the buggy. As far as the presence of arsenic in the body is concerned, I believe that was introduced after Mrs. King's death.
Orders! Dr. Flanders, do you set your opinion against that of Dr. Croft, a man well known even in your country?
Professor Croft is not a practicing physician. I did not understand him to say he had ever examined any cases of arsenical poisoning.
Is it not true that you yourself have not seen any cases of arsenical poisoning in human beings, only in cats and dogs?
That is so, sir.
Dr. Flanders is followed by Dr. Thomas Nichol of Simcoe, Ontario, who knew Dr. King and thought well of him, and who also conducted an experiment with arsenic on himself.
It was in 1855. For 21 days, I took 3 doses of arsenic per day of 1/3 of a grain per day, amounting to 7.5 grains in all. On the 8th day, I noticed certain symptoms similar to the ones attributed to the deceased Mrs. King.
And were you able to draw any conclusion from your experiment, Doctor?
Chiefly, sir, that arsenic is a cumulative poison, contrary to the opinion of many and to the opinions which have been expressed in this court.
See, if, then, it had been possible to examine the contents of your stomach after those 8 days, what do you believe would have been found there?
Well, the sum of the doses of arsenic which I had taken. In other words, 7.5 grains.
But this is merely opinion set against opinion, and provides one more point for the jury to consider. There are only 2 more witnesses, and the defense is concluded. All but Mr. Cameron's address to the jury, in the opening of which he strongly warns them against prejudice.
Gentlemen, I know that there have been, perhaps from prejudice, perhaps from the natural irritation which must have arisen in the minds of the relatives of the accused, I know that there have been spread through that part of the country from which the prisoner has come statements both prejudicial and wrong. I know that there have been publications in a newspaper of that locality which must have tended strongly to prejudice the prisoner in the minds of the people of the surrounding country, and tended greatly to prevent that kind of fair play that every man is entitled to who trusts himself to God and his country.
Mr. Cameron stresses and re-stresses the matter of giving the prisoner fair play, not only to the extent of resisting prejudice, but of overlooking foolishness.
Gentlemen, Men are often foolish, and the prisoner at the bar has acted foolishly. Now, what does press against him is the fact of the letters which have been read to you having been found in the possession of the prisoner. Now, we can scarcely understand how the parents of that young girl allowed her to be taken away to a foreign country at the dead of night by a man who was to them a perfect stranger. Now, the only thing which can be said is that the prisoner did not dishonor the girl, because we have the fact proved that no intimacy took place. We have also proved that these two were only acquainted a little more than 3 weeks before the death of the prisoner's wife, and yet his supposed affection for this young woman is assigned as the reason which induced him to get rid of his wife.
But Mr. Galt, for the prosecution, considered that some of Dr. King's actions were much more than foolish.
All that had happened was that an inquest had been ordered. No accusations had been made. Why, therefore, did the prisoner abscond when he heard of the inquest? If he were innocent, why did he not remain, so that he could say to the world, "You have conducted your inquest, and there is no evidence of foul play"? I say to you, gentlemen of the jury, that he knew what the results of the inquest would be, and fled in terror. As for the suggestion that someone put arsenic into the body of the deceased after her death, do you believe that anyone would have done such a diabolic act just to incriminate Dr. King? But even if you did believe such a thing, you cannot believe that arsenic was put into the liver, because you have heard sworn, expert testimony to the effect that such a thing is impossible. Now, the defense has tried to excuse certain actions of the prisoner as being foolish. But I say to you now that all his actions, from start to finish, are completely consistent with guilt. And I submit to you that you cannot reasonably excuse him from the guilt of his wife's death.
His lordship summed up fairly and suggested to the jury that in their deliberations they answer 3 questions.
First, what was the primary cause of death? Second, had the stomach been tampered with before Professor Croft's examination? And third, why did the prisoner take flight on 2 occasions? I must emphasize, however, that if you find his flight the action of a guilty man, it cannot alone be considered evidence of guilt. An innocent man may run away because of momentary fright or confusion. The flight of the prisoner, therefore, can only be considered in conjunction with all the other evidence you have heard. In conclusion, having regard to what has been said about prejudice, I say to you now that the accused must not be convicted on mere suspicion, however suspicious his actions. You must be convinced of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. You must not raise fanciful doubts to bring about his acquittal.
But perhaps the jury did have some fanciful doubts, for they brought in a verdict rather strange in a case where if the accused was guilty, he must have deliberately planned his wife's death by poison.
We find the prisoner guilty with a strong recommendation to mercy.
4 days later, Mr. Justice Burns passed sentence after inquiring if Dr. King had anything to say.
Yes, my lord. I have this much to say, that upon my most solemn oath I am not guilty of the charge laid against me. I have no doubt of this. My conscience is perfectly clear on this point.
I must say the facts carried conviction to my own mind, and I entirely concur with the verdict. I cannot see that yours is a case in which a recommendation to mercy is justifiable.
And it seems that the public generally concurred in the verdict, for none of the petitions launched in the doctor's favor met with enough support to be presented. And the public apparently were quite justified, for on May the 15th, 1859, 3 weeks before the date set for his execution, Dr. King confessed. But in doing so, he couldn't help laying much of the blame on someone else's shoulders.
I've been led astray by women. Women have been my ruin. I'm not the first one to be led astray by them. Women are costly things. They cost me too much. My action was caused by my ardent passion of love for the opposite sex.
But in one respect, Dr. King confounded the expert medical witnesses for the Crown. The cause of death, said Professor Croft and the others, was poisoning by arsenic. But Dr. King, in the shadow of his own death, would not have it.
The whole scientific world is deceived in reference to the cause of death. If this goes on record as a case of arsenical poisoning, it will be a most lamentable mistake. Arsenic is a cumulative poison. I therefore assert most positively that the 11 grains of arsenic found in Mrs. King's stomach accumulated there from a repetition of small doses not larger than those laid down in the pharmacopoeias.
Certainly, Professor Croft had said that the arsenic he found had caused hardly any inflammation. What, then, was the cause of death?
I had purchased a half-ounce phial containing 1 dram of chloroform and gave it her early on the morning of the day she died, whereupon she sank into unconsciousness. The real cause of death was chloroform.
And who should know better than the man who admitted he had killed her? It made the evidence on which he had been convicted false, but nobody considered it cause for staying the hand of the executioner. The trial of Dr. William H. King was produced in Montreal by Rupert Kaplan as part of the series Famous Canadian Trials. Script by Alan King, based on research by R.S. Lambert. Leading roles were played by Henry Raymer, Albert Miller, Eileen Clifford, Paul Hecht, Walter Massey, Philip Nielsen, Howard Rishpan, Gordon Atkinson, Gerald Rowan, Joan Blackman, and George Alexander. The program was presented by this station through the facilities of the International Service of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Sunday Showcase is a Canadian radio show which airs Sunday nights on CBC Radio 1. The program, hosted by Damiano Pietropalo, is an anthology of radio drama.
This is The Investigator.
Hello?
Hello, this is Mike Garson. I've got to talk to you.
Mike, my plane leaves in 30 minutes.
I'm in the lobby.
Mike, we went all over it this afternoon.
Just give me 5 minutes.
No use, Mike. I'm going through with it. I thought I'd made that pretty clear.
I met with the committee after I left you.
Oh?
They asked me to see you again.
It won't do any good. Goodbye, Mike.
Wait, don't hang up. Look, we can't talk over the phone. Let me come up.
I'm leaving for the airport.
I'll ride out there with you.
Mike, what's the use? Oh, all right. Meet me out front.
You've got to call off the hearing.
It's too late now, even if I wanted to. You saw the spread it got in the paper?
You can dream up an excuse. You're an expert at it. A postponement, illness, anything.
Save your breath, Mike.
You realize what'll happen if you get yourself out on a limb?
I've been out there before. Way out.
Well, this time the committee won't go along with you.
I run the committee. It doesn't run me.
Do you run the party, too? One more error and they'll let you have it.
You're a smart politician, Mike, but you've guessed wrong before.
I'm not guessing. I'm warning you. I'm speaking for the party now. You're going too far.
I've heard that before.
This time it isn't just some crackpot college pinko or some lousy departmental assistant. This man is too big.
No one is too big. There's no one so high or so low as to make him immune to investigation where there's the slightest trace of evidence that his actions or beliefs are detrimental to the interests of this country. You can't stop me. The committee can't stop me. The whole party can't stop me. Nothing can stop me. Stewardess.
I'll be with you in a moment, sir. Fasten your safety belt, please. Fasten your safety
Your
belt.
attention, please. This is Captain Jarvis, Chief Pilot speaking. We have developed some trouble in one of our starboard motors, but there is no cause for alarm. However, we are bucking severe headwinds and having difficulty maintaining altitude. I have decided to turn back rather than continue with one motor not functioning. Thank you.
Oh, miss.
Yes, sir.
I must send a wire.
You have time to do that at the terminal, sir.
Oh, that'll be too late. I'll write out my message, and you ask the pilot to radio it back to the terminal and ask them to send it.
I'm afraid that's impossible. No personal
You know who I
message-
am.
Yes, sir, but no exceptions can
What is
be
your
made.
name?
I'm Miss Davidson.
This message concerns an investigation I'm conducting. It is of the utmost urgency.
Well, I don't doubt
You
that, sir.
acknowledge the importance of my message, and yet you refuse to convey my message to the pilot.
It won't do any good, sir.
You realize that only one interpretation can be put upon your refusal, Miss Davidson.
I'm very sorry,
It
sir.
seems to me that you're deliberately obstructing an official investigation that is of vital concern to every loyal citizen of this country.
No, sir. But the regulations...
Miss Davidson, your uncooperative attitude can only cast the gravest doubts on your own loyalty, Miss Davidson.
I'm only doing my job. I'll speak to the pilot if you wish. We're on fire.
Good day, sir. My name is Martin, Inspector Martin of the Immigration Service.
Immigration? I don't understand. Where am I?
It's quite all right, sir. You're safe now.
Where are we? I don't seem to remember.
You'll be all right in a moment. You had a nasty shock.
The plane. Did we crash?
Yes, you crashed.
Oh, I'm alive. I've got to send a wire.
Well, there's no need for that now, sir.
This is very important. Where's a phone I can use?
There's no phone, sir.
Oh, there must be a phone around here somewhere. What is this dump anyway? I can't see anything. It's so foggy.
The fog will lift soon.
Where are the other passengers? How many survivors were there?
There were no survivors, sir.
You mean I'm the only one?
There were no survivors.
What are you talking about? Are you crazy? I'm here. I'm alive, aren't I? You know who I am?
Yes, sir. I know all about you. It would be a lot easier for you if you figure it out for yourself.
What's your name?
Inspector Martin of the Immigration Service.
All right, Martin. You say you know all about me. Then you must be aware of the importance of the work I'm engaged in. In view of this, your refusal to cooperate can only cast grave doubts on your motives. Now, you'll make things a lot easier on yourself if you answer my questions in a straightforward manner. Now then, I have been in a plane crash. I ask you where I am, how I got here, where the other passengers are. And you tell me there are no survivors. And you... Oh, I see.
Yes, and the fog has lifted, hasn't it?
But I had so much to do yet. All my plans.
I know how you feel, sir. Everybody feels like that at first, but you'll snap out of it. After all, you're one of the lucky ones. You're up here. Of course, you've only got a temporary visa, but I'm sure you won't have any trouble in getting a permanent visa at the main gate.
The main gate?
Yes.
Well, it's about time, Martin.
Sorry I'm late, sir. I was delayed at the border.
You're always delayed at the border, Martin. Why don't you tell these immigrants where they are right off, instead of beating around the bush?
Well, I found it's better to break it gently. Regulations don't forbid it.
I know all about regulations. I've been gatekeeper for a long time. You young fellows think just because you've got civil service jobs you can get away with anything. When I started in the immigration service, we had to keep on our toes, believe me. I don't know why I stay on this job. No efficiency, no cooperation. I ought to hand in my resignation. But I won't. I won't give some people the satisfaction.
Sir, I have an applicant here.
Oh, yes.
Here's the file, sir.
Applicant for permanent entry, 578-293-BO21. Welcome.
My name is...
Yes, I know who you are. It's all down here in the record. Now, if you just sign this...
What is this document?
Standard form, application for permanent entry. Sign right there.
There you are.
Fine. Martin will show you to your quarters.
This way, sir.
Just a minute. Why are we going this way? Isn't that the main gate over there?
Oh, you can't go through that yet.
Why not? I signed that document.
Well, that's just an application. Before you can go through the main gate, we've got to investigate you.
Investigate me?
You'll be investigated thoroughly by the Permanent Investigating Committee on Permanent Entry. I'm the chairman.
And what happens if I do not get a clean bill of health from this committee of yours?
In that case, it means deportation.
Deportation? To where?
Why, down there.
I want to state at this time, most emphatically, that I refuse to submit to any investigation by any committee whose members, for all I know, may be completely unqualified to pass judgment on me.
My good sir, are you questioning the integrity of my committee?
I make no allegations. I'm making a statement on policy.
But you've got to be investigated.
I raise no objections to investigation. In fact, I welcome an investigation. My record is clean. Before I do so, however, I must be satisfied as to the competence of that body. If you will submit to me a list of the names of persons eligible to sit on this tribunal, together with a list of alternate nominees, I will inform you of my approval or disapproval in each individual case, and we can then determine the composition of the committee.
My dear sir, you can't select the committee that's going to investigate you. That's unheard of up here.
Well, it's not unheard of where I come from. I assure you that I have no wish to disrupt the work of your committee. I am merely making this request in order to provide a safeguard which will guarantee fair play and justice. Nor am I attempting in any way to put any pressure of any kind on either you or the members of your committee. However, may I point out that your refusal to even consider it might be construed wrongly and might lead to speculation, that certain members of your committee fear that their impartiality might be challenged.
You're listening to a satirical play called The Investigator, first aired on CBC Radio in May 1954. I'm Michael Enright.
May we enter?
Why, certainly.
Forgive the intrusion. My companions and I come here on a matter of grave import.
Come right in.
My name, sir, is Oates, Titus Oates, Doctor of Philosophy.
This is a rare privilege. I've read about your career with great interest, Dr. Oates.
In a certain sense, we pursued the same line of endeavor as did my companions. May I present Torquemada, Inquisitor General of the Spanish Inquisition?
I am honored, sir.
I am very happy to make your acquaintance, Mr. Torquemada.
And this is another distinguished member of our profession, so to speak, Mr. Cotton Mather, formerly of Salem, Massachusetts.
I bid you welcome, sir.
Cotton Mather. Well, this is a privilege.
And this gentleman is the distinguished jurist, Baron George Jeffreys.
How do you do, Judge?
Your servant, sir.
I see his lordship's name is not as familiar to you as that of Torquemada Mather. His lordship's fame would have been instantly known to you had I presented him as the hanging judge, formerly of the bloody assizes.
Oh, the hanging judge. Why, this is a pleasure. I should have remembered the name, Judge.
No need for apologies. So few people do.
The devil take you out, I've had enough of your jibes. The fame of the bloody assizes will live long after your confounded popish plot will have been forgotten. Miserable little sneak, informer.
You dare call me that, butcher?
My friends, I beg of you. We shall be giving our new friend a false impression.
Up here, we live in peace and brotherly love.
Oh, don't apologize. You should hear what some of my pals used to call me. Well, I'm really flattered by this visit, gentlemen. Of course, I'm not really in yet. I understand I've got to be investigated first. I'd like to ask your advice. I raised a point with the gatekeeper in
The
connection
committee
with
has already met in executive session, and your proposal has been rejected.
Oh, you seem to know a great deal about it.
That's hardly surprising, sir. We are on the committee.
You are?
We have served on it for a considerable length of time.
I assume there won't be any obstacles to my entry?
None whatever, sir. Your permanent entry is assured.
However, we merely serve in an advisory capacity.
The gatekeeper makes all final decisions.
We, of course, play no small part in influencing those decisions.
The gatekeeper has never, to my knowledge, used his veto.
And you gentlemen see eye to eye on most matters?
On all matters.
Well, I don't want to embarrass you, but it does seem peculiar to find Titus Oates, an enemy of popery, in complete agreement with Torquemada, the founder of the Inquisition.
Your point's well taken, sir, but up here, one's perspective changes. We rise above our differences.
Say rather that we have submerged our differences in the face of a treacherous and powerful enemy.
And that enemy is?
Down there.
Ah, I see. A foreign power.
It is our high purpose to awaken the apathetic multitudes to the imminent danger of an attack from within by this foreign power, which has never renounced its goal of complete domination.
But how have these subversive elements managed to enter? Who is responsible?
The gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper?
In my considered opinion, speaking as one trained in jurisprudence, the evidence is overwhelming.
Then why is he being permitted to remain in his present high position of trust?
For some time now, we have been considering ways and means of exposing the gatekeeper and forcing his resignation. We've hesitated to do so until a man could be found to take his place. Your arrival at this time is most opportune.
Gentlemen, surely you don't mean...
There is no doubt you are the man.
I am honored. But I am, after all, a newcomer. Surely one of you would be better qualified. You're familiar with the local political situation. You've studied the available evidence.
One factor outweighs all other considerations. In you, we have a man who can bring to the committee's work the latest inquisitorial techniques.
Gentlemen, I cannot find the words to express my feelings of humble gratitude at the signal honor you're conferring upon me.
Then you accept? In that case, we propose...
Just a minute, Judge. Seems to me this undertaking of ours is not without certain dangers.
We can expect to rouse some disapproval and even active opposition. but nothing so serious that we cannot cope with it.
I wasn't thinking of the lower levels of the administration, Mr. Mather. I was referring to,
You're concerned about the chief.
Frankly, yes.
You need have no fears on that score. The chief never interferes.
Rest assured, sir, we will have a free hand.
Then, in all humility, I dedicate myself to the task of bringing to light the facts of this monstrous conspiracy that threatens our way of life up here. And I shall not cease until I have fixed the blame for 1,000 years of treason.
The committee will come to order. We have before us an application for permanent entry. Is the applicant present?
I'm ready.
There are a number of rules
Mr.
governing
Chairman.
the conduct of these
Chairman.
hearings. It is our
Mr.
purpose
Chairman.
on this
On
committee...
a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, I was about to inform
Sir,
you
I believe
of
my
the
point
rules.
of order takes precedence.
As I understand it, the point of order is usually
Chairman.
raised in connection with procedure.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Since I have not yet informed you of the rules, I fail to see how a point of order...
Mr. Chairman, my
is...
point of order is not raised in connection with rules of procedure. It goes much deeper than that. The competency of this committee to conduct an investigation.
Sir, you have raised
Please
a
do
point...
not interrupt.
But the committee has already
Chairman.
considered your proposal.
Mr. Chairman, I must insist that I be allowed to finish my point of order without interruption from the chair.
Oh, very well.
Today, I am prepared to bring specific charges concerning the fitness of a certain member of this committee to sit in judgment upon me or any applicant.
That is a very serious charge.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest you ask me against whom these charges are being preferred?
Yes, I was about to do so. Against whom are you preferring these charges?
I bring these charges, which if proven, and I have no doubt that they will be fully substantiated, in which event the member of the committee who has been found to be derelict in his duty should be removed from this committee. I think you'll agree to that, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Any member who's been proven to be unfit to serve on this committee will not be allowed to continue to sit upon it. But will you please state against whom you are bringing these charges?
Against the chairman of this committee, the gatekeeper.
You charge me with unfitness? That is preposterous.
Chairman.
It's ridiculous. It's completely out
Mr.
of
Chairman.
order.
Mr.
The
Chairman.
applicant will be seated, and the hearing in his case will proceed.
Mr. Chairman.
You are out of order.
Mr. Chairman.
You are out of order.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot accept that ruling. You stated just now, did you not, that any member of the committee who is proven to be unfit will be removed?
Yes, I did. However...
Your statement carried the clear implication that charges of such a nature, in order to be proven or disproven, must first be fully heard.
Yes, in the
And
sense...
yet, when you learn that these charges are directed against yourself, you refuse arbitrarily to even hear these charges. Now I ask you, sir, was your first statement a true statement of the position of this committee with respect to the airing of charges of unfitness in connection with any member and his consequent removal from this committee in the event such charges were found to be true? And if it is true, then is your second statement to the effect that I am out of order in preferring charges against you consistent with the first statement alluded to? Or did you mean in your earlier statement to exclude yourself from the category of members against whom charges can be preferred? And if that was the meaning of the statement, upon what precedent do you base such a flagrantly improper ruling?
Well, I don't follow your question.
Oh, now, come, you know that's a perfectly simple question.
The first statement?
Or were you lying?
How dare you accuse me of lying?
Then it was true.
It most certainly was.
Then how do you reconcile it with your present position?
I merely stated...
You must realize that it cannot be reconciled, unless, of course, you were deliberately creating a false impression.
I deny that. I was stating the truth.
I'm glad to hear you so positive about it. If, as you say, you're telling the truth, then you do not, in fact, you cannot refuse to consider charges against any member of this committee, including yourself. Are you refusing now to allow me to air these charges?
No, of course not. That would not be consistent. I concede that. But I am objecting on grounds of proper procedure. I am the chairman of this committee. You now propose to investigate me. Clearly, as long as I am in the chair, it would be most improper.
I agree completely.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dr. Oates?
May I suggest that the matter would be expedited in the interests of propriety best served if you were to relinquish the chair temporarily while these charges are placed before the committee. Would this be satisfactory to the applicant?
I have no objection whatsoever.
Well, it's completely without precedent. However, if it will expedite matters... Dr. Oates, will you take the chair?
I shall consider it a privilege.
Most unusual.
You may proceed with your charges.
I wish to call as my first witness Inspector Martin of the Immigration Service. Inspector Martin, I have just a few questions. I'm sure you can answer them quite easily. Were you the officer who conducted me to the gatekeeper's office yesterday?
I was.
Isn't it a fact that the gatekeeper stated at that time that there was gross inefficiency in the Immigration Service?
Well, what he meant was...
I'm not asking you what he meant. Confine yourself to the facts. Is it a fact that he said there was gross inefficiency?
Well, yes, he did, but...
Those were his exact words, gross inefficiency.
He did use those words,
in reference to the Immigration Service, of which he is the head.
Yes, but if I may say
There's no need for statements. Confine yourself to answering my questions. Now then, did he also make a statement at that time to the effect that the way things were going in the Immigration Service, you can get away with anything nowadays?
I think he said something like that.
You think? Isn't it a fact that those were his exact words? You can get away with anything.
Well, he may have...
Oh, come now, you're hedging, Martin. Did he say it or didn't he? Yes or no?
Yes, he used those words.
Did he also make a statement to the effect that he feels unable to cope with the disorganized state of the Immigration Service and that he felt he should hand in his resignation? Is that true?
Well, that's true to an extent.
To what extent? He complained about the disorganization of the service?
Yes.
And he made a statement about handing in his resignation?
Yes, he did.
Then your answer to my previous question, which was, that's true to an extent, was not a completely truthful answer.
Well, if you want to put it that way...
I am putting it that way. Your answer to my question as to what extent the statement I attributed to the gatekeeper is true should have been that it isn't entirely true.
Well, I suppose it should have been.
Then you were lying.
No, sir, I was not lying.
Not deliberately, Inspector. Let's say you're confused.
Yes, I suppose I was.
On reconsidering the question, then, and take all the time you want before you answer, you would say that it is entirely and completely true that the gatekeeper made all the statements attributed to him. Please answer the question.
Yes, it is entirely true.
I'm Michael Enright, and this is Rewind here on CBC Radio 1 and Sirius Radio 137. What you're listening to is a play called The Investigator that first aired in May of 1954 and is one of the legendary plays of the golden age of radio. Now back to the hearings.
Sir, you've heard the testimony of the previous witness?
Yes.
Was his testimony true?
Well, I want to be fair to Inspector Martin.
I think up till now we've all been so.
I would say that his testimony is true insofar as the actual words are used. However, the intent...
I think the committee can draw its own conclusions as to the intent.
Well, that may be, sir, but the point is...
The point is that you actually used those words.
Well, yes, I must say I did.
Very well, then. If, as you admit, your department is grossly inefficient...
Well, I do not admit it.
Is it not possible that certain subversive individuals have managed to infiltrate up here by taking advantage of this laxness and gaining permanent entry?
That is absolutely impossible. I deny it.
You deny they have gained entry by taking advantage of your laxness? How, then, did these subversives gain entry?
Well, they got in... I deny that any subversive elements gained entry at all. I never said they did.
But if certain undesirable elements have infiltrated here, you admit the responsibility would be yours and yours alone.
Yes, it would. But I again deny that such a thing is possible. Every applicant must undergo the usual routine investigation.
Routine? Don't you think the applications of, let us say, of heretics, dissenters, rebels, many of them with prison records, should be given more than routine consideration?
Sir,
Don't you think you should have exercised the most careful vigilance in cases of this kind?
Sir,
that you should have subjected such individuals to the most intensive scrutiny?
All our investigations follow the standard pattern. That is what I meant by routine.
In other words, you admit that cases of individuals most likely to be subversive up here were investigated with no more thoroughness than you would use in the case, say, of an applicant whose record was without a blemish.
I did not consider it necessary.
What was your motive in coddling known subversives?
There was no evidence that any of them were subversive.
You deny the possibility that a more complete investigation would have brought forth facts that would have possibly exposed their affiliations with a foreign power? Do you deny that possibility?
How can I answer?
Do you deny that possibility?
I cannot answer such a question. No one can.
Then you do not deny such a possibility.
Obviously, I cannot deny it. I neither deny it nor admit it.
Can you deny it?
No matter how many times you ask me that question, my answer
Mr. Chairman,
must
the witness
be
is not being responsive. I ask that the chair direct him to answer the question.
I protest, Mr. Chairman. The nature of the question is such
In
that
the opinion of the chair, the question is a proper one. Witness is directed to answer.
Can you deny such a possibility?
I neither deny nor admit it.
But you do not deny it?
No, I do not deny it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, in view of the admission of gross inefficiency by the gatekeeper, in view of the fact that he cannot deny there's a possibility that subversive persons likely to be agents of a foreign power, by taking advantage of the gatekeeper's laxness, if indeed it is mere laxness and not deliberate and treasonable coddling of such persons, have succeeded in infiltrating up here for the purpose of undermining our way of life. In view of these facts, this committee has no alternative but to reopen for complete and thorough investigation a number of cases.
I protest.
Specifically,
this is a deliberate attempt to discredit the Immigration Service.
Chairman,
I insist that we proceed with the regular business of the committee.
May I remind the gatekeeper that he has temporarily relinquished the chair.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to you. How much longer are the members of this committee going to tolerate these disruptive tactics?
The chair agrees that this committee has no alternative but to reopen a number of cases in order to determine the truth of the allegations which have been made. It therefore
I will not be a party to any such undertaking. I will resign first.
If the gatekeeper feels that this is the only honorable course open to
That is exactly how I feel. I'm resigning. Do you hear? I resign. I resign.
The committee will come to order. Let the record show that a full quorum of the committee is present. This is the first open session of this committee under my chairmanship. And I wish to announce the hearings on new applications will be suspended temporarily in order to enable the committee to reopen for investigation a number of cases in which permanent entry has been granted and where the committee has reason to believe there is evidence of disloyalty, actual or potential. Mr. Oates, who is our first witness?
Socrates.
Please state your full name for the record.
I am called Socrates.
Mr. Socrates, what is your occupation?
Philosopher.
Mr. Socrates, this committee has heard certain testimony in closed session concerning your activities. An accusation has been made against you to this effect, that Socrates, is an evildoer and a curious person who searches into things under the earth and in heaven, and he makes the worst appear the better cause. Do you care to deny that statement?
While I have the life and strength, I shall never cease from the practice and teaching of philosophy, exhorting anyone I meet after my manner and convincing him,
Witness
saying that...
is not being responsive to the question. Mr. Chairman, I request that he be ordered to answer yes or no.
Witness will answer the question. Is this accusation true? And if so, are you still engaged in these subversive activities?
I do nothing but go about persuading you all, young and old alike, not to take thought for your persons and your properties, but first and chiefly to care about the greatest improvement of the soul. I tell you that virtue is not given by money, but that from virtue come money and every other good of man, public as well as private. This is my teaching, and if this is the doctrine which corrupts the youth, my influence is ruinous indeed. But if anyone says that this is not my teaching, he is speaking an untruth.
Oh, come on now, Socrates. Don't hand me that. You know that's not an answer to my question. Unless you're responsive to the question, the committee can draw only one inference.
Acquit me or not, but whatever you do, know that I shall never alter my ways, not even if I have to die many times.
Mr. Socrates, your failure to clear yourself of the charge of subversion, although given a fair opportunity to do so, can leave no doubt in the minds of the members of this committee that granting you permanent entry was a serious mistake. Any questions? Mr. Oates?
No questions.
Mr. Torquemada?
No questions.
Judge Jeffries?
No questions.
Mr. Mather?
No questions.
Mr. Socrates, it is the ruling of this committee that pursuant to Section 28A, Article 4B, Paragraph 2 of the Internal Security Regulations, you be handed over to an officer of the Immigration Service for the purpose of deportation from up here to down there. Mr. Oates, do we have another witness?
We do.
All right. Please state your full name.
Thomas Jefferson.
Your occupation?
President.
Did you engage in any other occupation, Mr. Jefferson?
I was a gentleman farmer.
No, I'm not referring to that. Is it not a fact that you were an active revolutionary?
Mr. Chairman.
That, in fact, you were one of the leaders of a movement which had as its aim the overthrow of established government by force and violence?
Mr. Chairman, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another...
Come on now, Tom. You know you're stalling. Just answer the question. You don't have to make a speech.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps if you made the question more specific. We all want to be fair to Mr. Jefferson.
Your point is well taken, Mr. Oates. Mr. Jefferson, I hand you a statement purported to have been made by you in a letter to a Mr. William Stephen Smith. Will you read it, please?
What country before ever existed a century and a half without rebellion? The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. It is its natural manure.
Did you or did you not make that statement? If you did, do you still subscribe to those views?
If there be any among us who wish to dissolve this union, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it.
Who are you trying to kid, Tom? I've asked you a simple question. Why don't you cooperate with this committee? Are you opposed to the work of this committee? Don't you think this committee has a right to expose subversives like this Socrates? Now, where do you stand, Tom?
It behooves every man who values liberty of conscience for himself to resist invasions of it in the case of others, or their case may, by change of circumstances, become his own. It behooves him, too, in his own case, to give no example of concession, betraying the common right of independent opinion by answering questions of faith which the laws have left between God and himself.
I think it's a waste of time to question this witness any further, unless the committee has some questions.
No question.
Mr. Jefferson, it is the ruling of this committee that pursuant to Section 28A, Article 4B, Paragraph 2 of the Internal Security Regulations, that you be handed over to an officer of the Immigration Service for the purpose of deportation from up here to down there. Do you have another witness?
Yes, we do.
Then we'll proceed. Please state your full name.
John Milton.
Occupation?
Poet.
Have you ever engaged in any other activity, Mr. Milton?
For a short time, I was Latin secretary to the Lord General Cromwell.
I don't think that's quite accurate, Mr. Milton. Would it not be more accurate to say that you were one of the chief propagandists for a man who led a bloody revolution and later became a ruthless dictator? Is that not a fact, Mr. Milton? That was your chief activity, not poetry. Poetry was the sideline, wasn't it? You wrote political pamphlets, didn't you?
I did but prompt the age to quit their clogs by the known rules of ancient liberty, when straight a barbarous noise environs me of owls and cuckoos, asses, apes, and dogs.
Strike that from the record. Now, you won't get anywhere, Milton, by insulting the members of this committee. Now, we're giving you an opportunity to clear yourself. Why don't you play ball with us, John? Why are you trying to protect this two-bit general, a man who was a disgrace to his uniform? Now, if you wrote these pamphlets on Cromwell's order, we can understand that. We understand you had some personal difficulties with Mrs. Milton. You probably needed the money. We don't wish to pry into your personal affairs, John. This isn't one of those star chambers like they used to have in your time. Just tell us where you stand in your own words.
Give me the liberty to know, to utter and to argue freely, according to conscience, above all liberties. And though all the winds of doctrine were let loose to play upon the earth, so truth be in the field, we do injuriously by licensing and prohibiting to misdoubt her strength. Let her and falsehood grapple. Whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter. Her confuting is the best and surest suppressing. For who knows not that truth is strong next to the Almighty? She needs no policies, nor stratagems, nor licensing to make her victorious. Those are the shifts and defenses that error uses against her power. Give her but room, and do not bind her when she sleeps.
Well, there's no doubt where you stand, Jack.
He's saying the same thing this Jefferson fellow said. All these fellows say the same thing.
Naturally, they say the same thing. They're part of the same conspiracy. John Milton, it is the ruling of this committee that pursuant to Section 28A, Article 4B, Paragraph 2 of the Internal Security Regulations, that you be handed over to an officer of the Immigration Service for the purpose of deportation from up here to down there. William Lyon Mackenzie.
The drama to which you are listening is called The Investigator, and it first aired on CBC Radio in May 1954. I'm Michael Enright.
Let the farmer leave his husbandry, the mechanic his tools, and pour forth your gallant population animated by the pure spirit of liberty. Be firm and collected. Be determined. Be united. Never trifle with your rights. Strive to strike corruption at its roots, to encourage a system calculated to promote peace and happiness, to secure as our inheritance the tranquil advantages of civil and religious freedom, general content, and easy independence.
Francois-Marie Arouet de Voltaire.
Liberty of thought is the life of the soul.
John Stuart Mill.
If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind. We can never be sure that the opinion we are endeavoring to stifle is false opinion, and if we were sure, stifling it would still be evil.
Martin Luther.
It is neither safe nor prudent to do aught against conscience. Here stand I,
I cannot do otherwise.
Baruch Spinoza.
Thomas
It is the
Paine.
ruling of this committee that pursuant to Section 28A,
Oliver
Article
Cromwell.
4B, Paragraph 2 of the Internal
Giuseppe
Security
Garibaldi.
that you be handed over to an officer of the
Victor
Immigration
Hugo.
Service for the purpose of deportation
Abraham
from
Lincoln.
here to down there.
Good morning, Ludwig.
Good morning, Wagner.
And how are you this morning, Johann Sebastian?
Quite well, thank you. Have you heard what happened yesterday at the
Please,
investigation?
Johann, no politics. Our little club is devoted solely to music. Shall we try the new quartet?
Chopin is not here yet.
Yes, I'm afraid he will not be coming here anymore.
Why not?
I have taken the liberty to ask him to resign.
How could you do such a thing, Richard? We have played with Frederick for ages.
I hated doing it. He is a fine musician, but we must be realistic. There have been certain rumors about Frederick. I don't believe them, of course, but in his youth he had certain political tendencies. And even some of the titles of his compositions, like the Revolutionary Etude, well, I thought it would be safer not to be associated, just until this blows over. And now, the quartet.
How can we play the quartet? There are only 3 of us.
I have invited someone to take Chopin's place. A fine pianist, a great musician.
Who, Liszt?
No. He was a friend of Chopin.
Schubert?
Oh, no. He was a friend of Liszt.
Then whom did you invite?
Otto Schmink.
Otto Schmink? I have never heard of him.
That is exactly why I have chosen him. No one has ever heard of him.
Pardon me, sir. That door is locked.
But this is my laboratory. It has never been locked before.
Sorry, sir. Orders.
But I'm engaged in important research.
My orders are that you are to be refused admittance.
Why?
You're a security risk. I'm sorry, Mr. Galileo.
But my research project.
That has been taken over by someone else.
Taken over? By whom?
Professor Schmink.
Oh, blithe newcomer, I have heard. I hear thee and rejoice, O cuckoo. Shall I call thee bird, or but a wandering voice?
May I express our gratitude to you, Mr. Wordsworth, for gracing our poet circle tonight. And now, we are privileged to hear some new poems by the author Percy Bysshe Shelley, one of our most distinguished...
Tennyson, no.
Your pardon, one moment. Yes, what is it, Coleridge?
Haven't they told you about Shelley?
No.
He has been under suspicion for some time now, and the committee said he's banned his works.
Dear me, I didn't know.
Yes, it would be impossible for him to be here.
Yes, of course it was. Yes, of course I see the necessity. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to announce that Mr. Shelley will not be with us tonight. In fact, Mr. Shelley has been dropped from membership in the Poets' Circle. May I also say at this time that any opinions expressed by Mr. Shelley in the course of his association with our circle did not reflect the views of the other members. Now then, to continue, in Mr. Shelley's place, we shall hear a newcomer to our circle, the distinguished and inspired poet, Mr. Schmink.
Galileo.
Percy Bysshe Shelley.
Section 28A, Article 4B, Paragraph
Frederick
2 of
Chopin.
the Internal Security Regulations.
Ludwig
to be
van
handed over to
Beethoven.
an officer of the Immigration Service.
Johann Sebastian Bach.
Deportation from up here
Richard Wagner.
down there.
Otto Schmink.
Is that you, Oates?
Yes.
Oh, come in.
Oh, I must talk to you.
I've just been going over the list of tomorrow's witnesses. Small potatoes. Can't we jazz the hearing up with a few names? I don't want them to think we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. What's the matter with you, Oates?
Someone you will see.
Who?
I'd rather not mention any names.
Mystery witness, eh? All right, bring him in.
No, you must go to him.
What? Are you kidding?
I assure you the matter is most urgent.
Oh, all right, I'll take your word for it. This guy better be important.
Believe me, he is. Come, just outside the main gate.
You're late, Oates. You know I don't like to be kept waiting, you stupid oaf.
Now, just a minute. Just a minute here. Mr. Oates is a member of my staff. I will not have a member of my staff spoken to in that fashion. I don't care who you are.
You don't?
Oh, I see. Oates, we must watch what we say. How do we know this conversation isn't being recorded?
You have my word of honor as one gentleman to another.
What do you want?
You must stop these investigations.
Are you giving me orders? Apparently you have some hold over Oates, but you're not running my committee. If you think you can put pressure on me...
Stop this orgy of deportation. Stop sending those crackpot reformers down there.
I will make no deal.
But you don't know what's been going on. Jefferson and Milton are calling for a Congress. Martin Luther and John Stuart Mill are making speeches about the rights of the damned. Cromwell and William Lyon Mackenzie have recruited a lost souls militia. That madman Socrates keeps asking me if I know what virtue is. Me! And that lunatic Karl Marx.
Which Karl Marx?
How should I know? There are hundreds of them all over the place. Remember those pamphlets you handed them at their hearings? They took them with them when they got deported. They printed thousands of copies. And you know what their slogan is? Workers of the underworld, unite. You have nowhere to go but up. Now they've gone and organized a union. And they have the gall to want me to negotiate with them. Before I do that, I'll see them in... I can't cope with it. Stop the investigations. You're bungling it. There are ways of doing these things.
Are you criticizing my methods?
At first, they didn't take you seriously. Good. Then they began to be frightened. Good. They kept their opinions to themselves. Good. They stopped joining clubs. Good. They informed on their friends. Good. But you went on and on and on. Now they're beginning to ask themselves, maybe I'm next. Where will it lead to?
Nowhere. After my next hearings, they won't dare open their mouths. When I started, I said that I wouldn't rest until I had fixed the responsibility for thousands of years of treason. Certain personal investigations I've made have led me to an inescapable conclusion. Oates, you will issue the subpoena immediately.
For whom?
Who do you think? The chief. I am the chairman of this committee. I will decide who is to be investigated.
But you should have consulted the members of the committee before...
The subpoena has already been issued.
You must quash it.
There is no point in further discussion.
There is still time.
The subpoena will not be quashed.
This is madness.
You cannot investigate the chief.
You've gone too far. There is no one so high as to be immune from investigation where there's the slightest suspicion of that person's
The chief is the supreme power. There is no greater power.
This committee is a greater power. I am a greater power.
But he is the chief.
No, I am the chief. I am the chief. I am the chief.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Martin. Lovely morning, isn't it?
Beautiful. Glad to see you back on the job, sir.
Thank you, Martin. It's good to be back. Well, it's all over and done with. Now we've got to look ahead. We're going to have our work cut out for us. All these people to be relocated. Oh, dear, when I think of the paperwork alone. Oh, Martin, I have an interesting assignment for you. I think you're going to enjoy it.
A relocation?
No, a deportation.
I see.
Here is the file, and let us hope this is the last deportation we shall ever have.
This way. Come along now.
I'm the chief.
Just
Point of order.
follow me.
Answer the question. Let me
Take
finish,
it
please.
easy.
I'm
That's
the chief.
right. I know
I'm
this
the chief.
way now. Come
I'm the chief.
along.
Yeah.
Just a little
That's a simple
farther.
question. Just answer yes or no.
That's
Strike that. Down there. Section.
Ah,
48.
I was expecting you, Inspector Martin.
Point of order.
And your charge.
Pursuant to Section 28A, Article 4B, Paragraph 2 of the Internal Security Regulations, I now hand over to you rejected applicant number 578293021. That is all.
I'm the chief.
Not quite, Inspector. I now inform you that I refuse entry to the applicant.
You refuse? But you can't refuse.
I can and I do refuse.
Let me finish.
I have certain rights too, you know. You must give me my due, as the saying goes.
But you've never refused before.
That is true. In the past, I invariably prepared a warm welcome for rejected applicants.
Treason.
A very warm welcome. But I will not have him set foot on my territory. That is final.
But I can't go back with him. What am I going to do?
May I suggest you look up Article 35C, Paragraph 4A.
Article 35C.
Mr. Chairman.
Paragraph 4A.
That's right.
Here it is. In the event that rejected applicant is refused entry down there after deportation, the inspector in charge is required to return said applicant to his place of origin at the point where applicant first crossed the border.
I'm the chief.
Exactly.
It's incredible, Doctor.
Those are the facts, Mr. Garson.
He was the only survivor?
No doubt about it. Are you a close friend, Mr. Garson?
Yes, I am.
I think you ought to know, Mr. Garson. The crash seems to have affected his mind.
Well, after all, the shock.
It's a little more complicated than that, I'm afraid. He keeps babbling about being the chief and something about no one being too high and phrases like up here and down there. Completely irrational.
But he isn't violent?
Oh, no, quite docile.
This condition is temporary?
It's hard to say.
Well, at least his life was spared.
Mr. Garson, the plane crashed on top of a mountain, thousands of feet high. Yet he was found wandering about at the foot of the mountain.
Well, what of it?
The authorities say it's absolutely impossible for any human being to get down that mountain in the dark by himself.
It was an act of God, Doctor. An act of God.
The Investigator by Reuben Shipp first aired on CBC Radio in May of 1954. It was produced and directed by Andrew Allen. The Investigator was played by John Draney. Among the other actors were some of the top names of the day: James Doohan, Tommy Tweed, Barry Morse, Eric Christmas, and John Colicos.
Midnight Cab was produced and directed, all episodes, as part of the Mystery Project by Bill Howell out of the Toronto CBC Radio Drama Studios. Perhaps the most listened-to series under this banner was Midnight Cab, a half-hour mystery show about a 19-year-old Toronto cab driver named Walker Devereaux. Here's what Thrilling Detective has to say about Midnight Cab. The show starred David Ferry as Walker Devereaux, a young man, rather gullible and naive, from Bear River, north of Lake Superior, who comes to Toronto in order to become an author and winds up driving a cab on the midnight shift. From the start, he keeps running into problems, such as that body that someone left in the trunk of his cab, and he solves the mysteries with the help of his girlfriend, wheelchair-bound Krista Papadopoulos, who dispatches cabs, Alfonso Piatelli, his boss, and Metro Police Inspector Wilfred Kiss, a friendly homicide cop. Each episode is fairly self-contained, but the series builds on its past episodes as well, so we see Walker's developing relationship with Krista, his coming to terms with the big city, etc.
Walker, where are you now?
Yo, Krista, Harvard and Spadina.
Okay, 1253 Baptist, apartment 4, going to the airport.
Right.
Boring, eh?
What do you mean?
Well, if any more damsels in distress call, I'll let you know.
Krista? Oh, jeez. October 30th, 91. What's the difference between driving cab in the daytime or at night? Julie Swenson. If Eddie hadn't caught the flu, if I wasn't driving days to cover for him. Sometimes you think you got something handled, or at least behind you, and then somebody comes along and it all starts up again. Like how my father died.
Hi.
Oh. Hi.
I'm sorry. Did I wake you up?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I could...
No, I'm on duty. It's okay. I'm working a double shift like all night and now today because one of the guys is sick.
Are you sure it's okay?
Yeah. I turned and looked at her. At first, all I could see was eyes. She had one of those faces some girls have where you fall right into their eyes. Huge, dark eyes and a small, pretty mouth and white skin and... the eyes.
I'm going to, 472 Silver Birch Road. I've got it written down. It's supposed to be somewhere in Scarborough, or near Scarborough. I forget which.
Well, that's a clue. I'll look it up. If this was Big River, it'd be a snap. Turn left at the train station, go down to the big white house on the corner, take a left.
Oh?
But it's not, so... Silver Birch Avenue, Silver Birch Crescent, Silver Birch Road.
With the big wooden moose in the park in the middle of town? That Big River?
You're kidding. Are you from... No, you're not from Big River. I know everybody.
I was.
You're kidding. Really? How could I miss you?
Oh, well, I was like small, 4 or 5, I think. I stayed with his family for about a year. I remember that moose.
Walter.
What?
But that's his name.
Oh, right.
So, what family did you stay with?
Davidson, I think.
Joe Davidson on Arley Street. And that's how it started. I drove her out to Silver Birch Road and she talked all the way. Because I was from home, I guess, or near home anyway. Northerners feel like Newfoundlanders when it comes to southern Ontario, like being in a foreign country.
So I'm kind of scared.
I'd be kind of scared, too.
Yeah. It took me over 3 years, once I made up my mind to do it. They just keep bouncing you around, from this agency to that one to this government department. I even had to hire a lawyer once. But I found out, and now I know everything. When I finally found out who she was and where she lived, mailing that letter, actually letting go of it and hearing it drop through the slot, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Until now.
What'd you say? I mean, in the letter?
Oh, Dear Mrs. Layton, don't faint or anything when you read this, but I'm your daughter. And a lot of other stuff. Everything I'd found out. When and where I was born, how I was put up for adoption in Thunder Bay, even though I was born in St. Catharines, which is kind of strange until you think about it. She was only 17 when I was born, and her father was like this prominent businessman in town. And I sent her a couple of photographs I had from when I was real small, and some more right up until now. I didn't do a guilt trip or anything. I don't feel she has anything to be guilty about. I had to work my way through all my feelings with this social worker before they'd even release any information at all.
What kind of feelings?
Oh, resentment, hostility stuff.
Oh.
I really didn't feel anything like that, but I had to talk about it as if I did, just to get by this person, you know? Anyway, I wrote and told her that she was my birth mother, and that I would like very much to meet her if she felt okay about meeting me. And if she did, she should call me at this number.
And she did.
Yeah! And I thought I was going to die. My voice was shaking, and I started to cry, and she started to cry. It was great.
Julie, guess what?
What?
We're here. Silver Birch Road.
Oh, God.
Houses are nice.
Yeah.
Expensive. It's in this block.
Where? Can you wait?
What do you mean?
Wait for me, just in case?
They invited you.
Yeah?
It'll be okay.
What if she doesn't like me?
She will. I mean, I like you, and I'm just a cab driver.
No, you're not.
Well, I'm not just a cab driver, but I'm a cab driver. I'll wait until It'll be okay. Before she got out, I wrote my phone number down on that piece of paper with the address and handed it back to her. Just in case. Sometimes she didn't have anything better to do, you know. I waited 5 minutes. Julie stuck her head back out the front door, smiled, waved, and I drove off. That's that, I said to myself. She's gone. Hello?
Walker?
Yeah. Julie?
Hi.
Hi.
You sound... did I wake you again?
Well,
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you woke me. So, how did it go?
Oh, it was great. Really. It was really great.
Great. Where are you now?
Back at the hotel. I'm just gathering up my stuff. She's picking me up later.
That's good.
Yeah. Can I see you?
There were 2 places I figured I could take her. Either to this blues club on Queen Street that I found my 3rd week in Toronto that's always crowded and noisy and weird, or this little restaurant near Bloor and Bathurst that's quiet and dark and romantic and cheap, or I could take her to both, in either order. When I saw her standing in the lobby of the hotel waiting for me, a beret perched on her head at an angle, her hands plunged into the pockets of her jacket, her face drawn, her eyes luminous, I knew. The restaurant.
This is nice.
Yeah. I hope you didn't mind riding the subway.
No, it was interesting.
I'm going to try to save up, get a car or an old junker, probably, but anyway, wheels.
Sounds good.
It's the insurance. The insurance would kill you. $2,000 or something like that.
How old are you?
How old are you?
20.
Oh.
How old are you?
19. I'll be 20 in March.
So you're here all by yourself, in a big city. Why?
Oh, just time to move on, I guess. Big river. It's small, but it's crowded, too. My mother, 6 sisters.
Really?
Really. 3 of them are married, so brother-in-laws, 2. And they think they know everything, brother-in-laws, and nieces and nephews, and 3 sisters still at home. Crowded.
Sounds sort of nice to me.
Oh, do you smoke?
Yep.
I roll my own. You want one?
Oh, I've got my own, but okay.
Actually, I want to be a writer. Jack Kerouac. You know him?
No.
Ginsberg, Burroughs, Ferlinghetti, Kesey, Corso.
Sorry.
The 50s. The Beat Generation. No? Well, I like all those guys, so anyway, I'm just drifting for a while.
Oh.
Looking for a novel to write, I guess.
Have you found one?
Nope. I keep a journal. I write everything down. I figure if I do it enough, I'll know what to write someday.
Makes sense.
I guess.
What about your father?
What?
You mentioned your mother and your sisters and everyone.
Oh, yeah. He died. So, listen. It was okay, your reunion? It went all right?
Oh, yeah. It was great. I told her all about myself. I'm a nurse's aide at Victoria Hospital in Thunder Bay, blah, blah, blah. All the way back to my first tooth. And she told me all about herself. And her husband was there. And he didn't seem to mind. I mean, the surprise and everything. All of a sudden, his wife has this grown-up daughter.
Right.
When she was out of the room, he told me that he'd known there'd been a baby. She told him just before they'd gotten married, so it wasn't a big surprise. Everything went really well. She wants me to come to their cottage. We leave at 5 this morning so we can see the sunrise and everything.
Oh.
Then we'll have the whole week together to just get to know each other. Just the 2 of us.
Sounds perfect to me.
Yeah, it is. Walker?
What?
I don't think she's my mother.
AP cab. Okay. Stand out by the front door. 5 minutes. I thought you drove a double shift. How come you're not in bed?
I'm not tired.
It's 2 in the morning.
No, I'm still not tired. Where's Mr. Piatelli?
Well, he's supposed to be covering for you, but every time I give him a fare, he's got some reason why it's not a good idea to pick them up. You want a coffee?
No thanks.
You know, when I call him, he says he's here or he's there, but I know exactly where he is. Sitting in Tim Hortons' parking lot, reading the paper and eating donuts. What a stoop.
It's his cab, his business.
Yeah, down the toilet.
Krista, what do you think the chances are of me borrowing Mr. Piatelli's car?
Are you kidding? 1 in 1,000. That's not a car, Walker. That's a 1959 pink Cadillac, all original parts, polished within an inch of its life.
Yeah, well, what do you think he'd say?
No.
Oh, jeez. I need a car.
Why?
Well, because there's this girl.
This girl?
Yeah, I just met her. Like today?
Oh.
I think she might be in trouble. Well, she's probably not in trouble, but I just think... Well, I need a car.
Oh. You do? Well, why? I thought you had a room.
What? No, I don't mean that. I mean, I might have to go somewhere.
Oh, well, go then, but you won't be going in Alfonso's car. Look, I'm busy. I've got things to do.
The keys are in his office. I'm going to have to borrow them. I don't have any other choice.
Neither do I.
Pardon?
Nothing.
So anyway, I have to take it. Can you tell him?
When are you going to have it back?
9:10 in the morning.
I see.
I don't know how she could see. She was looking into the corner. She didn't turn around, sat there motionless for a moment. Then she started thumbing through some invoices. I left. Krista. I don't know exactly what she expects. Sits in her wheelchair making wisecracks all night. One time we went next door to have breakfast together and she used her crutches. By the time we got back, she was really tired out, but she pretended she wasn't. The truth is, I'm afraid to show her how much I do like her because it's heavy, and I don't want to hurt her. But there's no use pretending, Krista and her wheelchair and her crutches and everything, that it isn't heavy. I've thought about taking her out, but how would you go to a movie? And that blues club on Queen Street, it's 2 stories up. So I left. 5 after 5 in the morning, a gray Saab Turbo pulled up in front of the small hotel Julie was staying in on Lombard Street. Julie came out of the lobby carrying a suitcase and a flight bag. The trunk on the Saab sprung open, and then a tall, slim woman in rusty red corduroy pants and jacket got out of the car and embraced her. She helped Julie put her bags into the trunk. Then they got back into the car, pulled out onto Jarvis, heading south towards the Gardner. As they passed by me, I could see Julie's pale face through the window. She was smiling. She looked really hopeful and frightened all at the same time. Mrs. Layton circled around the city, then drove north on Highway 400. I followed her, staying back a safe distance. It was still dark. I didn't really know why I was following Julie. As soon as she'd said that she didn't think that woman was her mother, then she'd immediately changed her mind. Of course she was her mother. It was just nerves. She was so nervous and tense, everything was magnified 100 times. Her mother's smile wasn't as warm as she thought it would be. Her hugs, kisses not quite emotional enough. But that was unfair. After all, this was a daughter she hadn't seen in 20 years, perhaps only saw once, briefly. She was expecting too much. It would take time. And yet, shouldn't there be something, some immediate recognition, an instinct? Yes, this is me, a part of me that I'm looking at. And back and forth she went, first taking one side, then the other, until she was exhausted, until there was nothing left for her to say. So for some reason, I leaned over the plates of lasagna and I kissed her. And she smiled. She even laughed. And that was that. We didn't talk about it. I didn't tell her that I thought her first instinct around this Mrs. Layton sounded right to me. And that getting up at 5 to drive north to see the sunrise seemed more than a little weird. So there I was, cruising along 1,000 yards behind the unsuspecting Julie, trying to stay inconspicuous in a pink Cadillac and wanting to protect her, but not knowing how or even from whom or why I felt that way in the first place. I was confused.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Smell the pine.
Yes. Great place, isn't it? Well, come on. Let's go inside.
The water's so still, peaceful, like glass.
Grab your bags. Here, I'll help you.
Shona, you don't have anything?
Oh, no. I leave a wardrobe up here. I'm up here all the time. Come on, dear, let's go in. I want to show you the place.
Didn't think it would be so big.
It started out as a log cabin, and people kept adding wings. Well, that's what David told me anyway. Come on, Julie, dear. Come inside.
It was light by the time they turned onto a rolling blacktop road and then into a narrow dirt laneway. I eased the Cadillac into the lane just in time to see the brake lights flash up ahead as the Saab eased slowly over the rocky brow of a hill. The laneway forked. I turned off, drove at right angles to them for a moment, then pulled the car up into a clump of birch trees, got out and half walked, half ran through the dew-wet grass and branches down the hill towards the lake. Now, I was hiding, soaked to the skin, behind a tree, sweating, panting, and watching Julie, looking as happy as anything going into the cottage. I just stood there panting, steam coming out of my mouth. She was happy. I, on the other hand, was a fool. And then a man appeared, walking along the path below me. He stopped for a moment, still in the trees, looking up the slope towards the cottage. He was a tall man, wearing coveralls, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Suddenly he moved off the path down to the edge of the lake, circled below the cottage, and then up another knoll and disappeared into a small guest cabin. And then I noticed the silence. No loons called out in the lake, no birds singing, no insects buzzing in the gloom of the woods. Just a heavy gray silence, as if all of nature was holding its breath, as if something terrible had happened and the shock was still rippling through the moist, thick air.
This is my favorite time of day. I always walk along the lake in the morning. If I miss it, then the rest of the day, it just seems off somehow.
I don't know how much sun we're going to see. It's misty.
We'll walk down as far as the point. The sun will burn it off, and then it'll be spectacular. You'll see.
I still can't believe I'm here. I mean, with you.
I know, dear. Same here. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, you sure lucked in, eh?
What do you mean?
Oh, just, such a nice cottage and your house, and to have a husband like like David, who owns his own business and everything.
Yes, I suppose so.
You deserve it. I mean, he's lucky, too. I'm just happy for you.
Well, I am lucky. I'm especially lucky now.
Me, too. What do you want? Should I keep calling you Shona or Mom or... it doesn't matter to me, but just so I know.
Mom, of course.
Okay.
Well, let's get going then. Oh, no.
What's the matter?
Oh, I forgot my camera. I want to take some pictures of you. I'll run back. You go on. Just follow the path.
I can go back.
No, it'll only take me a second. You walk on. It goes right along the lake. I'll catch up to you before you've gone very far.
Well, okay.
No, you go on. I'll catch up.
Julie hesitated for a moment, a kind of puzzled expression on her face as she watched the other woman hurry back towards the cottage. And then she turned and walked right below me along the dirt path, looking down at the water glistening darkly below her, and then disappeared among the trees. A game. Some terrible game was in play, but what was it? The answer seemed to be close to me, in the mist itself, some shape, some face, just out of reach. The willowy tall woman climbed the steps of the cottage and went inside. A moment, and then the man in the coverall came out of the guest cabin and hurried up the slope. Now I could see the woman again, standing just inside the door of the cottage, waiting for him. She opened it and he rushed inside. 2 players, playing what? I wasn't sure what to do. I knew I had Julie somewhere safely behind my back. If I could just see something, overhear a conversation, pick up just one missing piece, then the game would be clear. I began to creep along the edge of the path, reaching the clearing, then began to circle up the slope behind a screen of trees. They came out of the cottage together, running hand in hand, the man now dressed in a business suit carrying the duffel bag. They passed the gray Saab and got into a Volvo station wagon that was pulled up behind the cottage. The motor roared to life. He backed out. The car bumped up the rocky hill and over the brow, and the 2 of them disappeared. Now only the cottage, the gray Saab sitting there, and silence again. A profound ringing silence and games. Husband and wife games? Or lovers? And I knew. I ran back down the dirt path, almost flying through the shadows and over the knolls, running to catch Julie, running before it was too late.
Julie! Julie, stop!
The path twisted down right to the edge of the lake, crossed a little clearing by a pebbly beach, and there, on the other side of the clearing, against a wall of dark trees, I saw Julie. She was kneeling, looking towards me, her face absolutely white. I stopped. When she raised her hands up, I could see that they were glistening with blood.
Walker, how did you...
I walked towards her, feeling useless, late. Always late. On the path, lying half in the grass and half out, was a middle-aged woman in track pants, a jacket, and running shoes. Julie was cradling the woman's head in her lap. Blood oozed out of the ragged wounds in her scalp. Her matted, torn hair.
I was just coming along, and she was here. I didn't know what to do, Walker. I think she's dead.
I knelt down beside Julie, and there was a question, a horrible question, beginning to take shape in her face. I felt under the woman's chin. No pulse. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing now. Great, dark, luminous eyes.
Walker, oh my God, who is she?
Want some more coffee?
No. Do you?
No. If I drink any more, I'll get hyper.
Geez, that'd be a change, wouldn't it?
Ha. So, what's going on, Walker? Am I supposed to make you feel better?
What?
That Julie Swenson business. Ever since that happened, you've been on such a downer. So I'm just wondering, is that why you invited me to breakfast? Am I supposed to be comic relief?
What? God, you say stupid things sometimes.
Just wondering.
Besides, I've invited you to breakfast before.
Once. Anyway, it was awful. I don't know. And I wouldn't mind seeing you smile again. It's just... I'm tired of being everybody's sidekick, okay?
Sure.
Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall when I talk to you, Walker.
And vice versa.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Jeez.
Jeez is right. So, what happens anyway? I mean to her.
They're sending her home tomorrow, flying her back courtesy of the police department. She'll have to come back here a few times, of course, before it's all over.
Do they have a good case?
Oh, yeah. Husband and girlfriend want to do in wife to avoid losing property and money in a divorce settlement, but don't know how to go about masterminding the crime. Then, out of the blue, a girl writes to say she's looking for her birth mother, the man's wife. But the wife never sees the letter. The husband intercepts it. And now they have the perfect dupe. His girlfriend pretends to be the birth mother. The real mother goes up to spend some time at the cottage, as she always does in the fall. Goes on her routine 6 o'clock morning walk around the lake. The husband kills her, leaving the girl. Julie, to find her real mother on the pathway. Dead.
Nice people.
Yeah.
But Walker, wouldn't she just tell the police what she knew?
Who would believe her? She did just as they wanted. She was covered in her mother's blood. They had hidden the murder weapon. An old hatchet wrapped in a piece of Julie's clothing, along with a pair of small bloody gloves, up on a rafter in the cottage. And she was alone with her mother, as far as anyone knew. If the night clerk at the hotel had seen her being picked up by a gray Saab, well, all the better. The gray Saab was still there, and Julie, well, obviously she was deranged. Handed from one foster home to another, probably abused along the way, found her birth mother, and then, for some unaccountable reason, flew into a blind rage and killed her. Whatever corroborative evidence the police would need, the husband would certainly be pleased to provide. And then there would have been notes a certain social worker would have had on Julie, too. They might even have pulled it off.
Except she was lucky enough to get into the right cab with the right cab driver.
I guess.
Who can't resist a pretty face.
Well, guess I should go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walker. Thank you for... just...
It's okay, I know.
What do you know?
I mean, what you're going through.
I didn't even have a chance to... How will I ever forget what I saw?
I don't know. Time? That's what they said to me anyway.
What do you mean?
Nothing.
No, what do you mean, they said to you?
Just when my father died, you know.
Oh.
So anyway, you'll call me when you come back?
Of course I will. What would I do without you? I'll be okay. I'm determined. I will be okay. Goodbye, Walker.
She kissed me. A quick, fast kiss, her eyes still frightened like a deer caught in a headlight. And then she turned and walked away, looking back once. My arms jerked up to wave like some crazed robot. She smiled and disappeared. I stood there for a long moment. Then I walked back to my cab.
Walker, where are you?
Coming in from the airport.
Did you see her off?
Yeah.
She'll be back.
Yeah.
So, what's the matter?
Just old stuff. They brought back old stuff.
Like what?
Like my father. We were out at our camp fishing, and it was like at night, and I woke up and he wasn't there. So I got up and I started to shiver. I don't know why. I just stood there shivering for a while. And then I went to the door. And then I heard my old man. He killed himself.
Walker? Walker? You okay?
Yeah. So that's the difference between driving cab at night and during the day. Julie Swenson. Half of me's glad I met her. The other half, well, I'd just as soon have passed. Anyway, I'm doing all right. I've got my room over Durang's pawn shop on Church Street. Still driving cab for Mr. Piatelli, even though I keep stealing his Cadillac, or so he says. And I still roll my own cigarettes. Hey, maybe I will ask Krista out.
You have just heard Episode 4 of Midnight Cab, The Mystery of the Motherless Child, written by the series creator James W. Nichol. Featured in the cast were David Ferry as Walker and Jacqueline Samuda as Krista, with Suzanne Belanger as Julie and Carol Galloway as Shona. Music for the series is composed by Milan Kimlicka, and the casting consultant is Linda Grierson. The recording engineer is Joanne Anka, with sound effects by Matt Wilcott. The production assistant is Nancy Dow. Midnight Cab is produced and directed in Toronto by Bill Howell.
CBC Mystery Theater, The Old Nurse's Story. The Mystery Theater was a radio series that was written, adapted, produced and broadcast by the CBC from 1966 to 1968. Chills, thrills, mystery and adventure make up the stories from this classic series from the CBC.
The Old Nurse's Story, now on Mystery Theater. On Mystery Theater tonight, Mrs. Glaspell's Story, in radio version by Gavin Douglas. From CBC Halifax, we present The Old Nurse's Story.
There now, my love. Come closer, and I'll tell you something from long ago. Something that you've never heard. You know, my dear, that your mother was an orphan and an only child. There never was such a baby before or since, though you've all been fine enough in your turns. But for sweet winning ways, you've none of you come up to your mother, to my dear Rosamond. My mistress, your grandmother, commanded me on her deathbed never to leave my little charge, for I was the last person left alive who loved her. If my lady had never spoken so much as a word, I'd have gone with Miss Rosamond to the end of the world. And far we were to go before our tears would dry, or the grave flowers could wither.
You are the woman, Hester Albert.
I am, sir.
There is an orphan child here named Rosamond.
There is, sir.
Good. Stand aside.
If I may be so bold as to ask, sir.
Be good enough to stand aside when you are told. I am informed that you are the child's nurse. Fetch her.
They tell you right, sir. I was entrusted with Miss Rosamond by her poor mother that's now in a better place. And that's the last word I'll say until you tell me your name and your business.
I suppose that allowance must be made for your grief, or your breeding. My name is Carston. I have the honour to be agent to the Lord Marquess of Furnival. Oh, indeed. I should think that even a nursemaid would know it when her mistress was first cousin to a peer of the realm.
I was aware, sir.
That your mistress married a commoner of no birth or means against my lord's command, with the present result, a penniless orphan. And the child may count herself lucky that the Furnivals do not visit their wrath to the second and third generations. My lord is pleased to recognize Miss Rosamond as a blood relative, though mingled with inferior stock. As her guardian, he has ordered me to escort her post-haste tomorrow morning to Furnival Hall in Northumberland. See that she is ready.
Oh, Mr. Carson, you'll not separate us?
The choice lies with you. Miss Rosamond is accustomed to your care. If you mind your place, you may remain with her. 1 or 2 dependents, more or less, are of no concern to my lord. Good day.
But, sir, what are we to do?
You have your instructions. Good day. Hester?
Yes, Mr. Carston?
We are approaching Furnival Hall. Wake the child.
Must I, sir? She's in a deep sleep at last, and it's been such a long
Wake her,
time.
I say. We are entering the great park, and it's my lord's orders that the estate and rank of her ancestors be impressed at once upon her mind.
Very well, sir. Oh, come now, my love. Rosa, dear. Wake up, Rosamond. Yes, look at your eyes.
Where've we come to? Oh, where are all the farms and cottages?
Far back on the road, my dear. We're driving through the great park of Furnival Hall at the foot of Cumberland Fells. Look around you.
Oh, Hester, that's not a park. It's all wild and cold. There's nothing but rocks and old trees, all white and lonely.
Come now, Rosamond. Look at the great hall with it.
Yes, you were about to say, with tree branches dragging against its windows and its gardens turning back into forests.
Don't they have a gardener?
Oh, hush, Rosamond.
Miss Furnival will tolerate no gardens and no scenery. The curtains of her own apartments are drawn winter and summer, day and night.
Miss Furnival? Is my lord not here, then?
Lord Furnival? Wherever did you get that idea? My lord has never set foot within the walls, nor has any other member of the family these 50 years. For the same length of time, my lord's great-aunt, Miss Furnival, has never set foot in the outside world. I think it was in my lord's mind that Miss Rosamond might perhaps amuse his aunt. And the air is healthy here. Only beware the winter.
The winter, sir?
Come, we have arrived. Step down. Step down.
Come, dear.
I may not accompany you within. I am to join my lord at once in Newcastle. But you are expected.
Mr. Carson.
You have a month until the winter gales. When they come, if you are a wise girl, stop your ears and keep away from the windows.
Mr. Carson! Mr. Carson! When we came up the great front steps and were admitted into the entrance hall, I thought we should be lost. It was so large and vast and grand. There was a chandelier, all of bronze, hung down from the middle of the ceiling. I'd never seen one before and looked at it all in amaze. At one end of the hall, there was a great fireplace, cold and unlit. Oh, it was large as the sides of houses in my country. And on the western side was a huge old organ built into the wall, so broad and high that it covered the best part of that area. We were led on past the organ through endless stately corridors to the west wing. And at last, we came to a suite of apartments where it always seemed to be night. Fires crackled in all the rooms, and curtains of heavy velvet shut out the daylight. Miss Furnival sat in a high, narrow chair, her face as full of fine wrinkles as if they'd been drawn all over it with a needle's point. She looked proud and frail and trembling with a cold no fire could warm.
Welcome to Furnival Hall, Rosamond. You're a surprisingly pretty and graceful child. Perhaps you are a Furnival after all.
Sitting with her and working at the same great piece of tapestry was her companion, Mrs. Stark. Oh, she looked so grey and stony, as if she'd never loved or cared for anyone.
Do not stand staring, child. It shows an idle mind. And you, what is your name, girl?
Hester Allwood, ma'am.
Very well, Hester. Your quarters and the child's nursery will be directly over the kitchen. You will share your meals with Dorothy, the cook, and old James, her husband. Since Miss Rosamond has connections with the family, she will dine with Miss Furnival and myself. You will, of course, remain in attendance behind her chair throughout the meal. Is that clear?
Perfectly, ma'am.
Good. We dine at 7. I think that will be sufficient until then.
There is one other matter, and it is absolutely vital. You may move throughout this west wing and the center hall as you wish, Hester. But the east wing is locked and long abandoned and is never under any circumstances to be entered, no matter what may occur or seem to occur.
Very well, Miss Furnival.
You are very silent, Rosamond.
Oh, she's shy, ma'am. It's all very new and strange to her.
Oh, very likely, very likely. And yet she ought to be at ease here. You will see her face in a dozen portraits on the wall. Perhaps, Rosamond, our ancestors will approve. Perhaps the dead will even grow to love you.
Will they speak to me?
Speak to you? Oh, no. God grant they be too proud for that. God would not allow an innocent to hear. God would not allow...
Grace.
I beg your pardon. I am an old woman gathering wool. You'd better go now, Hester. James and Dorothy will show you round your quarters. Oh, Hester.
Yes, Miss Furnival?
When Rosamond is ready, you may bring her down to us. Don't wait until the bell.
Grace, if you are going to spoil the child...
Anne, it has been so long, so long. Surely we may relax some ceremony for the very young.
I tell you, Hester,
James looks down on me.
Oh, away with you.
I tell you he does. He's lived near all his life in my lord's family and thinks there's no one so grand as they. Till he married me, I'd never lived in any but a farmer's household, and he lords it over me as if he was a very Furnival himself.
Well, I be, in a way. Mind you, I'm very fond of you.
Hear him now.
Oh, I can think of nothing I'd rather do unless to hear both. Oh, it's so good to be amongst my own sort of people. In a house.
Say it. In a house that's forbidden, strange and cold.
Dorothy.
Oh, all right, James. I'll say nothing against your Miss Furnival. She's a good enough mistress in her high, grand way. If she holds herself so tall, she pays for it, as the good book says. Did you see her tonight after dinner, Hester, when Miss Rosamond went skipping off with James and me to the kitchen as soon as ever she could?
Yes, I do believe she wanted us to stay. Her eyes were begging Rosamond to stay, but she wouldn't ask.
She loves the little one, never doubt it. But it's too late now to make amends.
The weather's closing in these nights, Dorothy. You best pay mind to your own duties.
Is the snow so terrible here?
Huh? The snow?
Well, everyone seems to dread the weather. Tonight at dinner, Miss Furnival stared at Mrs. Stark with those sad eyes of hers and said, "I'm afraid we shall have a terrible winter." It seemed a harmless enough thing to say, but Mrs. Stark pretended not to hear and talked very loud as something else.
Come along, my dear. We're all becoming gloomy, and there's no need. Lord knows there are distractions enough here. It's a wonderful, great, rambling house and a famous place for a wee one like Miss Rosamond. Come tomorrow when you're free, and I'll show you the east wing.
You mean the west wing, Dorothy?
Bless us, yes. What am I saying? You great gowk, you flustered my wits with your teasing. Of course, I mean the west wing. It's all green and gloomy, Hester, through the tree boughs and the ivy that darkens the windows. But the rooms are full of treasures. All drowned, you might say, in the green water. Old china jars and carved ivory boxes and wonderful things. Of course, we'll go tomorrow. There's nothing to see in the east wing.
Nothing at all.
That a Christian would want to see.
You are slow coaching.
I haven't run in many a year, Miss Rosamond. And I shan't now, so there.
Oh, how many pictures there are, room after room.
Aye, they were a mighty family since the time of the border wars and long before. But this is the last chamber that was the old state drawing room in the grand days. They hung the best of the pictures here.
Who's the man in the plumes and gold lace?
That's Sir Humphrey Furnival that fought for the Martyr King and fled to France with Charles the Dissolute.
Dorothy, who's the lovely lady over the mantelpiece?
Well, you may ask. That, my dear, is the mistress, Miss Furnival, as she was these 50 years gone by.
Oh, that Miss Furnival?
A wonder to look at she was then. But such a set, proud look and the scorn in her eyes.
Hester, she's laughing at us. Why should she laugh? It's she who has the funny dress on.
It was all the fashion when she was young, miss. I remember something like it when I was a wee thing like you. Great ladies wore beaver hats with ostrich plumes tilted over their brows like that, and satin gowns with them quilted stomachers just as you see her.
Well, to be sure, flesh is grass, they do say, but who'd have thought that Miss Furnival had been such an out-and-out beauty to see her now?
Folks change, sadly. But there was another sister, and if what my master's father used to say was true, Miss Vanessa, that's dead now, was even handsomer than our mistress, Miss Grace. But if I show it to you, you must never let on, even to James, that you've seen it. Can the little one hold her tongue, do you think?
Oh, I wouldn't risk it. Rosamond, dear, yes? Go and hide in the next chamber, in the red room, and I'll show you how quickly I can find you.
All right. You never will find me, Hester. You know you never will.
Now, quickly, turn the picture round. That one. That's not hung up and leans against the wall. Yes, this way.
To be sure, it beats Miss Grace for beauty, and I think for scornful pride, too. Though for that matter, it's hard enough to choose. Miss Vanessa? She's dead, you say?
She was buried. Turn the picture round again, Hester. Turn it round and come away.
after night.
And bitterer yet for the shepherds on the fells.
Aye. 'Tis the time of year now, from our Lord's birth to Epiphany, that the wind and the cold here do their worst.
Seems cruel of the weather to bite most keenly in the Christmas season.
The wind's a Turk. It pays no mind to Saviour.
There.
Hester?
I can hear it again. That's the second night I've heard it. Someone's playing the great organ in the entrance hall.
Bah. Your fancy's got you, Hester. It's the wind, in the branches, and the old eaves.
Oh, James, it's not. Trees don't play melodies in airs. I can hear them distinctly.
And the more fool you, then, to take wind in the branches for honest tunes. Ugh, I've better things to do than to listen to the girl's fear of a storm. I've work to do in the pantry, and I'll tell you to keep your dreaming to yourself.
Forgive him, Hester. He's not been well these last days.
Dorothy, my dear, please hush for a moment. Just hush and listen, will you? Confess it, Dorothy. You hear it as clearly as I do. You do.
Oh, God help me, I do. And so does everyone else. You must learn to bear it, as we do. It will not harm you.
But who is it? Who's playing it?
Since before I came to the hall, it's been said to be the old Lord Furnival, the grandfather of the present Lord, playing on the great organ in the hall, just as he used to do when he was alive. I've heard it many a time, but most of all on winter nights and just before storms. You said Mr. Carson, when he brought you here, told you to stop your ears in the wintertime, and you did not know what he meant. I think you know now.
I thought at first it might be Miss Furnival who played, unknown to Dorothy. But one day, when I was in the hall by myself, I opened the organ and peered all about it and around it, as I'd done once to the one in our village church. And I saw it was all broken and destroyed inside, though it looked so brave and fine. And then, like it was noonday, my flesh began to creep a little, and I shut it up and ran away to my own bright room. I didn't like hearing the music for some time after that.
Come in. Oh, you're back, Hester. It was a bitter cold night to walk to church, I should think. I must confess that I admire your piety.
Oh, it's kind of you to say so, ma'am, but it's no sacrifice on a night like this. With the moon on the snow, it's as bright as day outside. Where is she hiding?
Where is who hiding?
Why, Rosamond, Mrs. Stark. Dorothy said she left the kitchen an hour ago, and she's not in any of the other rooms.
Hester, you are a What have you done? The little vixen is asleep among the cushions somewhere in the room, or hiding behind a screen, depend upon it.
Oh, Miss Furnival. Yes, Mrs. Stark. Oh, heaven bless you, Hester, you're here. It's Miss Rosamond. James is bringing me.
Where is she?
How is she doing?
Fire.
What's
The fire. She's nearly froze.
My darling, dearest Rosamond, where was she?
Oh, there now. A chafe for arms and legs. I saw a tiny footprint vanishing up the hillside in the snow. I ran as I haven't run these 30 years. And I found her halfway up the fell by the old holly bush, stiff and cold.
The holly bush.
Aye.
Sleepy. Sleepy. The beautiful lady. If you'd heard her cry, you'd have let her in.
Oh, thank God. James, dearest James, you were just in time.
Where's the lady? Hester, where's the lady and the little girl?
Oh, gently, my darling, gently. Tell us everything from the beginning, and then perhaps we can answer you. Where did you go when you left Dorothy in the kitchen?
I was on my way to see Auntie Furnival, and I saw snow falling through the windows, and I thought how pretty and white it must be to see it on the ground. And so then I went to the great hall to see out through the tall windows. And I looked out, and the snow was bright and soft. But there was a little girl. And so thinly dressed, Hester, in all the snow and cold, and not so old as I am, but so pretty. And she beat her hands against the window and cried to be let in.
Oh,
but all the time she beat on the glass, and all the time she cried, you couldn't hear sound.
Oh, heaven, forgive. Have mercy.
So I went outside to let her in, but instead of coming in, she took my hand fast and tight in hers, and it was very, very cold. And she took me up the fell path up to the holly trees, and there I saw a lady weeping and crying.
Devil. Restless alive she was, and restless dead.
But as soon as she saw me, she hushed her weeping and smiled, very proud and grand, and she took me on her knee and lulled me away off to sleep.
Oh, have mercy. Wilt thou never forgive? It's many a long year ago.
Grace, come away now, my dear. We're old, you know. We're old, and it's time to rest. Don't you think it's time?
Of course. Of course. You're right, Anne. You always were. Rosamond?
Yes, Auntie?
Would you remember something, my dear? Would you remember something if I said it?
Yes, Aunt Furnival.
What is done in youth cannot be undone in age. Good night, my dearest.
Good night.
Good night.
Come, Grace, come. That's it, my dear.
Rosamond, you were lying just now, or imagining things, weren't you?
Oh, indeed, Hester, I'm telling you the truth. Indeed, I am.
She must be telling the truth, Hester. She can have heard no stories of the child and the woman in the snow, but they existed once, and God help us, they do still. She must have seen them.
Tell me once and for all, what did she see?
She saw Miss Furnival's hell. That's always with her. That's with her for 50 years.
Oh, James was but a boy in the days when America rebelled against King George. The old Lord Furnival, our mistress's father, ruled here. He was a fierce, dour old man that broke his wife's heart with his cruelty and his mad pride.
But above all things, next to his pride, the old lord loved music. He could play on nearly every instrument you ever heard tell of. And it was a strange thing. It didn't go to soften his heart, but it didn't.
He had over an Italian music master to teach him the organ, but many's and many's a time as he rolled out his fine music, his teacher was walking in the woods with his daughters, Miss Grace, our mistress, and Miss Vanessa, whose picture you saw up above. You know their pride.
But pride will have a fall, they say. And they loved, the both of them that scorned the dukes and princes of their day. They loved an Italian music master.
And 'twas Miss Vanessa got him.
Aye. And Miss Grace swore vengeance, she did. And bided her time.
And the child at the window was Miss Vanessa's and the music master's.
Aye. And the next year, the Italian went off across the sea.
And never came back.
Aye.
What did Vanessa do with the child?
She tried to conceal it in her own quarters in the East Wing. And I found it.
Oh, Mrs. Stark, I didn't hear you at the door.
Nor did she.
The mother and child crying and freezing in the snow.
It was the old lord's right to know what went on in his house.
He didn't make the weather.
He didn't make the days.
But he laid down all his music and died soon after.
We think that, like the Italian, he loved Miss Vanessa more.
Miss Grace and Mrs. Stark had killed their loves.
And over the years, they did the same for ours.
House guests died. Servants and the rest of the family fled.
And never returned.
Take Rosamond away, Hester. Far away. Miss Grace loves her. They will kill her.
Go away, Hester. Far away. We love you. They will kill you.
But you're innocent. You killed no one. They can want nothing of you.
We are faithful servants of the family. We are adopted carnivals. If we love you, they will kill you. Run, Hester, run!
As I ran, my dears, with your mother Rosamond in my arms, I looked backwards at Furnival Hall. The centre block and the west wing where we'd lived were shrouded in darkness as if long abandoned. But the east wing, my dears, the east wing, it glowed and shone with lights as for a children's party.
Mystery Theater has brought you The Old Nurse's Story by Mrs. Glaspell in radio version by Gavin Douglas. The cast, Joan Orenstein as Hester in Youth and Age, Dan McDonald as Karsten, Faith Ward was Rosamond, Miriam Bell played Miss Furnivall, Mrs. Stark was played by Muriel White, James was Bill Fulton, Flora Montgomery played Dorothy. Sound, Lee Bailey and Harold Porter. Audio, Bud Tabor. The Old Nurse's Story was produced and directed from CBC Halifax by Peter Duncan. Frank Cameron speaking.